A convoy of armored vehicles cuts a line through the vast, empty desert, kicking up dust in its wake. Inside, a palpable tension fills the air as the passengers sit in nervous silence, the weight of their unknown destination pressing down on them. A soldier's voice finally breaks the quiet, delivering a stern briefing. He reminds them of the rules they've likely already heard: stay within the designated areas and do nothing to provoke the inmates. The soldier's warning hangs heavy, stressing the need for extreme caution in this new, dangerous environment. The oppressive silence is broken again, this time by a woman who introduces herself as Lala, explaining she has come to teach science. A man named Dante Kang responds, revealing that he is also a science teacher, a small point of connection in the tense atmosphere. As they shake hands, Lala expresses her surprise at the coincidence, while Dante Kang remarks that science must have had the most sign-ups. Nearby, two other men join the conversation. One wryly notes that his subject, ethics, wasn't very popular, while the other mentions that his music class is mandatory for the prisoners. The ice now fully broken, others chime in: an art teacher, a math teacher. One of the new arrivals sighs in relief, finally able to breathe after the long, wordless journey. They all agree, reflecting on the shared tension and the surreal reality of their situation, wondering how they could have possibly ended up in a place like this. Their destination is finally named, a word that sends a chill through the air: Fogland, the world's largest prison, a place grimly known as hell. Lala lets out a nervous breath, asking the others not to scare her so much. She tries to find comfort in its official title, questioning what could possibly go wrong in a place designated as an international prison. The ethics teacher, however, finds the term international prisons more suspicious than reassuring. He asks the others if they truly know how Fogland came into existence. He begins the story 50 years in the past, recounting how a massive meteorite had crashed down in the middle of a desolate desert. Then, only 5 years later, the great powers of the world joined forces to construct a prison directly on top of the impact site. The music teacher excitedly interrupts, recalling the many urban legends he'd seen online, like the theory that Fogland is actually a facility for imprisoning aliens. He even brings up a supposed satellite photo that captured a strange life form there. Cutting through the excited chatter, the ethics teacher continues his grim tale, mentioning a scholar who claimed that the prison's construction had opened the very gates of hell. He lets the chilling thought settle, suggesting that they might not be going to teach humans, but actual monsters. A quiet, dismissive scoff from Dante Kang breaks the tense atmosphere. The ethics teacher turns, confused by the sound. Dante looks at them with disdain, questioning how professional educators could actually believe in such baseless rumors. Dante continues, explaining his conviction that people live everywhere, and that no matter who they are, everyone possesses the right to learn. The ethics teacher challenges him, asking if he isn't scared. He argues that even if the rumors are baseless, it's still an international prison filled with world-class criminals. Unmoved, Dante simply replies that in his view, the inmates are merely lacking a proper education. The teacher can only think to himself how unlucky and naive Dante seems. Suddenly, a soldier's voice cuts through the air, announcing that they have 5 minutes until they enter Fogland. As the announcement is repeated, the other teachers can only stare, stunned by the sheer sight of the massive prison gate. They are left completely dumbfounded as a soldier announces the opening of the first gate. Even Dante is visibly shaken by the reality before him, the name of the prison escaping his lips in a whisper: Fogland. He thinks about its reputation as the largest prison on Earth, an operation run by the World Union itself. He steels himself, recalling his mission: he has come here to join a prisoner education project. A chillingly out-of-place sign hangs above the intimidating entrance, reading, "Welcome teachers." A soldier immediately lays down the grim rules, stating that no photography is allowed and warning them not to remove any belongings until they have been surrendered. As Dante Kang takes in his new surroundings, he notes the oppressive fog that seems to be everywhere, clinging to the air around them. The mist is so thick and pervasive that nothing is clearly visible, shrouding the entire facility in a gray haze. It suddenly clicks for Dante: this must be why the prison is known as Fogland. His thoughts are cut short by a soldier's voice confirming over a comms link that the teachers have passed through Gate 1 and are proceeding to Gate 2. The soldier's voice continues, laying out the procedure: after surrendering their belongings, the teachers will be guided to their assigned classrooms. He warns them to follow all instructions for everyone's safety. The teachers, including Dante, privately think that the soldiers are just trying to scare them with these grim warnings. With a curt command to move, the soldiers begin separating the teachers, directing them into different groups. The ethics teacher calls out to his colleagues, telling them to do well and come back safely. They are led down sterile, imposing corridors, the weight of the prison settling upon them with each step. Dante tries to reassure himself, thinking that there's nothing to be afraid of. It's just a place where people live, after all. He is soon guided into a stark white room, furnished only with a table and a microphone, which faces a thick wall of reinforced glass looking into an adjacent classroom. Dante Kang sits down at his assigned station, a wave of confusion washing over him as he waits for what comes next. He silently questions the setup, wondering if this is some kind of isolation classroom and thinking the entire arrangement is excessive. As he examines the room, his gaze falls on the reinforced glass. He wonders how they are expected to teach like this and doubts he can even see the blackboard properly. A soldier appears at the door, calling for Teacher Kang. Dante acknowledges that it's him. The soldier then informs him that the prisoners will be entering the classroom now. As a confused Kang looks on, the soldier delivers a final chilling order. He is not to leave his seat under any circumstances until the end of class signal sounds. With the warning delivered, the soldier slammed the door shut, plunging the room into an unsettling quiet. Dante remained silent, the soldier's final words echoing in his mind. Suddenly, a commotion from behind the classroom shattered the stillness. The door creaked open once more. A soldier escorted a group of beings into the room at gunpoint, their features grotesquely distorted and morphed, all clad in standard prisoner jumpsuits. Dante stared in shock, his mind reeling as he struggled to understand what he was seeing. The soldier showed no gentleness, violently slamming the new prisoners down into their seats. Each prisoner was brutally forced into position, handled less like students and more like dangerous animals. Dante's thoughts raced as he stared at the new arrivals, questioning if they could even be considered human. His mind grappled with the uncertainty of their very nature. On top of the sheer shock, a practical and daunting problem began to surface. He looked from one twisted figure to the next, the impossibility of the situation dawning on him. He wondered how on earth anyone was supposed to teach them anything. In that moment of despair, the words of his ethics teacher colleague echoed in his memory, a chilling premonition that they might one day find themselves teaching monsters. Shaking off the chilling memory, Dante quickly chides himself, dismissing the thought as nonsense. He mentally steels himself, reasoning that despite their records, people still live here. He grips the microphone, reinforcing his belief that these individuals are simply people who lacked a proper education. Clearing his throat, he prepares to address the silent room. He introduces himself as Dante Kang, their new science teacher. To start, he announces he has prepared a professional icebreaker for them. He mentions that while there are other fun classes like art and music, he's heard that science is the most popular. He then poses a question to the inmates, asking why they think that is. Answering his own question with a forced laugh, he jokes, wondering if their goal is to build a rocket and escape. His attempt at humor is met with a heavy, unnerving silence from the class. The silence is suddenly broken by a single, guttural laugh from a large, hairy inmate. A bead of sweat forms on Dante's brow. The atmosphere in the room suddenly feels thick and stuffy, the tension becoming almost suffocating. Trying to regain his composure, he quickly moves on, announcing that instead of rockets, they'll start with an easier, more fun topic as he reaches into his pocket. He pulls out a sweet potato, revealing that today's lesson will be about getting closer to nature. He then directs their attention to their desks, where a sweet potato has been placed for each of them. He formally identifies the object before them, confirming that it is, in fact, a sweet potato. The task for today, he explains, is growing these sweet potatoes, an activity he acknowledges is typically done by elementary school students. His reasoning is that since most of the world-class criminals here were raised in gangs, such a simple, nurturing experience will be entirely new to them. He concedes that it might seem trivial at first, but assures them that with just a small cup, some water, and a little attention, they will witness it grow into something more. Through this simple act, Dante continues, they will surely learn the true value of life. He acknowledges that everyone in Fogland is classified as a dangerous prisoner, but even so, they have come here today to learn. Dante then draws a powerful parallel, telling the inmates that they are like the sweet potato, possessing an infinite capacity to grow regardless of their environment. He announces that from this day forward, they will all try growing sweet potatoes together. But the message is immediately met with contempt. One of the prisoners scoffs, questioning if he's being compared to a sweet potato. His anger quickly escalates as he slams his hand on the desk, sending the sweet potato flying. He furiously demands to know if Dante is calling him a vegetable. Dante quickly tries to placate him, insisting that wasn't what he meant at all. He clarifies that his point was about their infinite potential for growth. His explanation is completely ignored. At that moment, the others began eating too, gnawing at their sweet potatoes and ignoring Dante entirely. Dante can only watch, absolutely stunned, as his lesson in horticulture descends into chaos. He is in complete disbelief as they all tear into the vegetable meant to symbolize hope and new life. Snapping out of his shock, Dante desperately pleads with them to stop eating it, explaining that he only provided one for them to share and cultivate. As his words fall on deaf ears, he wonders what kind of people he's dealing with. He knows they didn't come here voluntarily, which makes him question what their real motives are. Just then, a prisoner calls out to him. Dante turns, his attention captured amidst the commotion. The masked prisoner cuts him off, telling him to drop the foolish chatter. He has only one demand: Dante must explain how to manufacture fogs. Dante is utterly confused by the question, repeating the word fogs as if he's never heard it used that way before. He naively misunderstands, pointing out that the prison has plenty of actual fog. He then innocently asks if the prisoner is curious about how the weather phenomenon is created. The masked prisoner seems incredulous, questioning how a scientist could possibly be ignorant of what fogs is in this place. Dante clarifies that he is a teacher, not a scientist. A moment of realization dawns on him as he wonders aloud if this is all some kind of dark joke about using fog to escape. His thought is violently interrupted as the reinforced glass partition right in front of him suddenly shatters. The unexpected explosion of violence leaves Dante completely and utterly shocked, his sense of security instantly destroyed. He sees the source of the destruction. The masked prisoner stands there, having just smashed through the supposedly unbreakable barrier. Overwhelmed by the immediate threat, a horrified scream escapes Dante's lips. The prisoner menacingly asks if Dante still sees this as a joke. In a panic, Dante begins shouting for the control room, his voice filled with terror. He frantically reports that a prisoner is breaking the glass, his mind reeling as he tries to process how this is even possible. Still in disbelief, he mutters that the partition was supposed to be reinforced glass. At that exact moment, the classroom door slams open. A squad of soldiers rushes into the room, their voices echoing urgently as they declare a Code Omega situation. The room is stormed by a heavily armed squad, their weapons glinting under the harsh prison lights, ready for a confrontation. A chilling command cuts through the air as the soldiers are ordered to get the prisoners down and shoot every last one of them without hesitation. Without a moment's delay, the soldiers obey, unleashing a barrage of gunfire upon the inmates, and bodies begin to fall in the ensuing chaos. The relentless sound of automatic weapons echoes through the hall as the execution continues with brutal efficiency. Watching from a safe distance, Dante Kang is frozen in horror, his face a mask of disbelief at the massacre unfolding before his eyes. Stray bullets ricochet off the reinforced glass of his observation room, the sharp cracks underscoring the violence just feet away. He slams his hands against the door, screaming in desperation, demanding to know what is happening and pleading for them to stop the senseless killing. A soldier coldly informs him to hold his position until every single person has been executed, a statement that leaves Dante utterly stunned and speechless. Dante questions the sanity of the order, asking if they truly intend to kill all these people, but the soldier callously dismisses his plea. As the soldier mockingly remarks that some people can't see what's right in front of them, one of the prisoners calmly and deliberately walks right up to him. In a sudden, shocking display of strength, the prisoner grabs the soldier by the head and effortlessly lifts him clean off the ground. Dante Kang's horror shifts to sheer terror as he witnesses this raw, unexpected power from one of the condemned inmates. With a sickening crunch, the prisoner crushes the soldier's skull, and in the stunned silence that follows, it becomes clear that a new, terrifying player is ready to introduce himself. That single act of defiance was the spark that lit the powder keg. The other prisoners surge forward, a wave of pure brutality, tearing into the soldiers, crushing and slicing them apart with their bare hands. A chilling realization dawns on Dante. These aren't just rioters, they are the monsters of the largest prison on Earth. And from this day forward, they will be his neighbors. The sheer horror of it all paralyzes him. He collapses to the ground, his lungs burning as he gasps for air, unable to look away from the terrifying spectacle. But amidst the symphony of violence and screams, one man sits with an unnerving calm, completely detached from the chaos erupting around him. Dante's breath hitches in his throat, each gasp heavier than the last, as the suffocating reality of his new life closes in. Suddenly, the calm prisoner's gaze locks onto Dante, his eyes cutting through the pandemonium to fixate on the terrified newcomer. The overwhelming shock of the massacre combined with the man's intense scrutiny is too much for him to bear. Dante's world spins into darkness as he loses consciousness. As Dante slumps to the floor, the prisoner continues to watch his unconscious form in silence, an unreadable enigma at the center of the storm. The story shifts to the cold and oppressive silence of a prison cell. Within its walls, Dante Kang begins to stir, slowly emerging from an unconscious state. As his eyes flutter open, the first thing he sees is the still figure of another prisoner. A wave of confusion washes over him, the situation making no sense. He watches the other man, trying to grasp the reality of his confinement. Pushing through the disorientation, Dante forces himself to his feet. He recognizes him now, the same prisoner who had been disturbingly calm amidst chaos. As if sensing his gaze, the man turns to face him. For a long moment, their eyes are locked in a silent, tense standoff. Dante is the first to break the silence, his voice tight as he demands to know the man's identity. But his mind is still reeling, struggling to process the situation. He glances around frantically, taking in the grim, unfamiliar surroundings. The stark, cold reality hits him. He is in a prison cell. His confusion turning to alarm, Dante desperately asks where this place is. The other prisoner's response is both simple and chilling. He calls it his house. Stunned by the absurd answer, Dante repeats his first question with more force, demanding to know just who this person is. It clicks in Dante's mind with sudden, jarring clarity. This man is a prisoner. The realization unlocks a flood of memories as Dante desperately tries to piece together what happened, his mind settling on the chaos of a prison riot. Fragments of the event sharpened in his memory, he recalls the chilling order to shoot being given. He remembers the grim outcome, the guards were overwhelmed and killed in the uprising, and then, a hazy, unsettling memory of his own involvement begins to surface before fading away. Shaking off the disorienting flashbacks, Dante turns his attention back to the strange man before him. He hesitantly asks for confirmation of his location, seeking to understand if he is truly trapped inside a prison. Dante quickly clarifies his question, using the prison's notorious name, Fogland. A dreadful suspicion forms as he confronts the prisoner, asking if he was the one who brought him to this place. The prisoner simply nods in confirmation, prompting a frustrated Dante to demand to know why. Instead of answering, the prisoner inexplicably holds up a sweet potato and asks Dante for a favor. Dante is utterly blindsided, his mind struggling to process the sheer absurdity of the situation. The prisoner makes his bizarre request, asking to be told how to grow sweet potatoes. As the man pleads for his help, Dante's expression darkens. He had initially written off the strange behavior as mere ignorance, but he realizes this request is so far beyond the bounds of common sense that it feels like a mockery, and his confusion hardens into cold anger. His anger erupts into a furious shout. He can't believe he was dragged into a den of violent psychopaths for something as absurd as sweet potatoes. The sheer insanity of it all hits him, confirming ethics teacher's chilling words. These people weren't human. The situation was dangerously unstable. Panic begins to set in as he recalls how they tear people apart at random. A terrifying certainty washes over him. He was going to die here, just like the others. But then his fear sharpens into focus. He sees one arm behind him, his back turned, and notices the man is concealing something in his right hand. Dante's mind races, trying to identify the hidden threat. Was it a gun? A knife? The uncertainty coiled in his gut. Fueled by desperation, he lets out a curse and lunges toward the prisoner, deciding to act before he can be acted upon. With the conviction that he had nothing left to lose, he slams his full weight into one arm, throwing him off balance. The prisoner stumbles and falls to the cold floor, caught completely by surprise. Dante wastes no time, immediately pouncing on him and wrapping his hands around the man's neck, choking him to neutralize the threat. A surge of adrenaline-fueled triumph courses through him. He feels he has the upper hand, thinking to himself that compared to the other monsters here, this guy was nothing. He remembers how this prisoner barely even stood out back in class. A fragile sense of calm returns. He believes he can handle this situation if he just keeps his composure. His next move is clear in his mind. All he has to do now is secure the weapon from the man's right hand. But as he moves to disarm him, Dante freezes. He sees that the prisoner's right arm isn't just hidden, it's completely gone. The man he was so terrified of was disabled. There was no weapon because there was no hand to hold one. Processing the shocking revelation, Dante quickly uses his own necktie to bind the prisoner to the bed, finally letting out a shaky breath of relief. He offers a quiet apology for the violence, acknowledging that under these circumstances, he felt he had no other choice. Turning his attention away from the aftermath, Dante Kang's frustration boils over. He scolds his companion, blaming their stupidity for putting him in danger and finding the very idea of being kidnapped inside a prison completely absurd. He sarcastically brings up the earlier question about growing sweet potatoes, clearly dismissing it as a foolish distraction in their current predicament, before cutting himself off with a curt apology. Dante coldly informs him that he doesn't waste time teaching people he considers brainless, his words sharp and dismissive. He ends the tirade with a grim suggestion that it might be more nutritious for the other man to just eat himself. Having said his piece, Dante announces he's leaving. Walking towards the door, his mind shifts to escape. He wonders about the prison's schedule, like when the guards patrol or when meals are served, assuming the door must be locked from the outside. Peering through an opening, Dante reasons that after all the chaos, the prison must be on high alert. He feels confident that security is searching for him and that getting out is only a matter of time once he spots a guard. He presses closer, trying to get a clear view of the area outside. But all he can see is a thick, disorienting fog that swallows everything, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Blinded by the mist, he grabs the door handle and begins to shout, hoping to attract the attention of anyone who might be out there. To his utter astonishment, the heavy door swings open under his hand. Dante freezes in disbelief, his mind struggling to process what just happened. He questions if the door was truly open the entire time. The situation defies all logic. He can't comprehend why a prison door would be left unlocked. With caution, he steps through the threshold to observe the world he has just entered. What he sees stops him in his tracks. a sight so unexpected it leaves him completely stunned. Instead of the cold, metallic confines of a prison, he's looking out at a massive, sprawling cluster of houses, a hidden city thriving in the belly of the facility. Dante's mind reels in disbelief. He can't comprehend what he's seeing, shouting that this can't possibly be a prison. His denial quickly morphs into frantic desperation, as he repeatedly demands to know where his captor has brought him. Suddenly, a hand clamps over his mouth, brutally silencing his protests before he can make another sound. The prisoner who dragged him here leans in close, coldly telling him to shut up, clearly fed up with his nonstop yelling. The man's words are a death sentence. He tells Dante there is no escape and that his only option is to be quiet and survive here. Dante is utterly appalled at the suggestion. The thought of being forced to live in what he considers a disgusting dump is unimaginable. As he struggles to pry the man's hand away, Dante spits that his captor must be insane. He insists that he's a law-abiding citizen and doesn't belong with these people. He declares that he's different from what he calls society's garbage, but his tirade is cut short by the sudden appearance of another, much larger prisoner. An oppressive silence immediately falls over them. The sudden, heavy tension fills Dante with a cold sense of dread. The newcomer is an imposing figure, with a jagged scar carved across his chest that speaks of a violent history. The scarred man's gaze is intense and unwavering as he silently watches them, sizing up the situation. Feeling the weight of that stare, Dante quickly tries to defuse the situation, clarifying that his insults weren't directed at him. However, the prisoner holding Dante shows no fear, aggressively confronting the large man. He calls him a pig and demands to know what he's looking at, leaving Dante utterly confused by the sudden challenge. Provoked by the brazen challenge, the massive prisoner clenches his hand, raising a heavy fist. But instead of striking the man who insulted him, he swings his fist directly into Dante's face. The brutal impact knocks Dante clean out, leaving him sprawled half-naked and unconscious on the grimy floor. Later, back in their cell, Dante lies bruised and battered. His cellmate looks down at him, remarking that he had told him to shut up. Through the pain, Dante can only manage to curse the man. The prisoner continues to pin the blame on Dante, complaining that now even his own clothes have been confiscated because of the incident. Dante finally snaps, yelling in frustration. He demands to know why the man keeps pulling such foolish stunts, questioning if he has a brain at all to pick a fight with a monster like that. He gestures wildly, pointing out the absolute absurdity of the situation by reminding him that he doesn't even have an arm to fight with. As the prisoner silently stands up, Dante is hit with a wave of regret, wondering if his angry outburst went too far. His anxiety quickly turns to sheer terror when the man begins to take off his own jumpsuit. Dante screams, panicked and confused. He frantically asks what the prisoner is doing and immediately apologizes, clearly expecting the worst. The prisoner fully removes his uniform, ignoring Dante's continued, terrified apologies. But what happens next is not what Dante expected at all, leaving him completely bewildered. Instead of attacking, the prisoner holds out the jumpsuit, quietly telling the stunned Dante to put it on. Dante is completely taken aback, unable to comprehend the unexpected act of kindness. He stares at the offered clothing, his mind racing as he tries to figure out if his strange cellmate is actually being serious. Dante reluctantly puts on the grimy prisoner uniform, resolving to be more careful from now on. A chilling thought crosses his mind. If he's dressed like this, any rescue team sent for him might not recognize him. But his cellmate shatters that sliver of hope, informing him that there is no rescue team because all the guards have been killed. Dante can only echo the word guards, the grim reality of his situation sinking in. He quickly realizes that his only chance of survival is to avoid standing out. That is the fundamental rule of this place they call Fogland. As the other prisoner changes into a different jumpsuit, Dante, now fully disguised, announces that it's time for them to eat. He briefly wonders about the strange uniform he's wearing, but his train of thought is immediately broken by the mention of food. Then, a sudden realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. It's mealtime. This is his opportunity, perhaps his only one, to find and make contact with a guard. Meanwhile, in another dark corner of the prison, a huge inmate is humming a cheerful tune to himself. He appears completely content, a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere surrounding him. The reason for his good mood becomes clear. He's proudly wearing Dante's original clothes, admiring how perfectly they fit and declaring them his own. He only has one small regret. He thinks about the cool glasses Dante was wearing and wishes he had taken those too. His self-congratulatory moment is interrupted by a voice calling out to him with unsettling familiarity. A figure in a crudely stitched-up uniform steps forward, eyeing the new outfit and demanding to know where he got it. The huge guy's cheerful demeanor instantly evaporates, replaced by a guttural scream of pure terror. The hulking man immediately bows his head in deference to the newcomer, respectfully addressing him as bosses. Stammering, he quickly tries to explain, reporting that there's a newly arrived nerd with glasses residing in Tofu Village. The boss's interest is piqued. He muses aloud that Tofu Village is where the person he's been searching for has been hiding. Eager for approval, the huge man proudly boasts that he already confronted the newcomer for daring to wear nice clothes and promptly took them, chuckling as if expecting a reward. But instead of praise, the boss responds with shocking brutality, instantly piercing the huge guy's skull with a sword, leaving only a look of pure confusion on his face. With cold precision, the boss drives the sword deeper, ending the man's life without a second thought. The immediate area is gruesomely splattered with blood, a grim testament to the sudden, merciless violence. Ignoring the corpse at his feet, the boss whispers to himself with chilling satisfaction that he's finally found the one he's been looking for. A deeply unsettling smile spreads across his face as he utters a single, ominous word: teacher. This place is a suffocating forest of gray cement, where hope seems to be crushed under the sheer weight of concrete. The inhabitants possess skin like mottled camouflage, as if the very environment is claiming them. Their eyes hold the desperate, feral glint of a starving beast, constantly watching from the shadows. Dante Kang's mind recoils, struggling to understand what kind of beings these people have become. As he's led deeper into Fogland, a chilling question forms in his mind. Are they still humans, or have they devolved into beasts? Every step reinforces the oppressive, lawless atmosphere of the prison. His eyes fall upon a skeleton bound in wire, a permanent, grim monument to the brutality of Fogland. He sees more bodies impaled on stakes, displayed as grotesque warnings. A terrifying thought dawns on him: this place feels less like a prison, and more like a savage concrete jungle where only the strong survive. Distraught, Dante turns to his guide, hesitantly asking if this could really be a prison. The entire situation feels far too strange and chaotic to be official. The prisoner responds with a dismissive grunt, prompting Dante to press on. He points out how bizarre it is to see people wandering freely, some even looking drunk, inside what's supposed to be a maximum security facility. His voice cracks with disbelief as he gestures to the staked bodies, desperately seeking assurance that they aren't real people being used as horrific decorations. He struggles to reconcile this nightmare with his knowledge that Fogland was built by the United Nations. He can't comprehend how such an institution could be run in this utterly lawless and barbaric way. As Dante's mind reels, the prisoner beside him hisses a warning that his voice is too loud. Startled, Dante immediately drops to a whisper, the oppressive weight of the prison silencing him. He immediately scolds himself for his naivety, wondering what he was thinking. He questions if he's already developing Stockholm Syndrome to even consider asking his kidnapper for a polite explanation. Dante reminds himself that the man is a kidnapper, nothing more. He looks into the man's eyes and sees the same wild, crazed look that he's seen in the others, a familiar sign of madness in this place. The conclusion is unavoidable: this man is dangerous. Dante hardens his resolve, drilling a new rule into his mind: trust no one here. Later, the prisoners are herded into the chow hall, a rare moment of structured activity in the pervasive chaos. The vast room is filled with inmates, a sea of grim, hungry faces. The air is thick with the low drone of conversation and the clatter of metal trays on concrete. Dante is stunned to see that the scene is far more normal than he anticipated. The prisoners are actually forming an orderly line. Peeking forward to see the cause of this discipline, a sudden realization begins to dawn on him, and then he sees it, something that sends a jolt of shock through his system. At the very front of the line is the unmistakable shape of a guard's hat. A guard, the first symbol of actual authority he has seen since his arrival. A powerful wave of relief crashes over him. If there's a real guard, there must be rules and order. A desperate flicker of hope ignites within him. He thinks he might finally be saved. Dante quickly composes himself, resolving to stay calm. He knows he still looks like an inmate, so he must act as civilized as possible to stand out. He's determined to show the guard that he is different from the others. Just then, another prisoner ahead in the food line crudely demands extra ham from the server. The request is met with a swift smack to the head. The lunch lady barks for the next person, and Dante realizes it's his turn. He steps forward and, with forced composure, politely asks the man if he is a prison guard. The guard confirms that he is. A wave of relief washes over Dante as he quickly explains that he's a teacher assigned to the inmate education project. Leaning in closer, he whispers his name, King Dante, hoping for some sign of recognition. He urgently explains that he was kidnapped during the riot, discreetly pointing to the masked man on his right as the one responsible. He presses the guard, asking if he's aware of the riot and insisting that he contact his superiors immediately. Dante is certain that they must be searching for him, the missing teacher. But the guard doesn't respond, he just stands there, a line of drool trickling from his mouth. A knot of unease tightens in Dante's stomach as he tentatively calls out to the officer. Something is terribly wrong. Dante leans in, observing the man more carefully. The guard's eyes are vacant, his expression completely detached. He looks utterly messed up, sending a chill of pure dread down Dante's spine. Confusion and horror collide within him as he begins to question what he's even seeing. His shocked stillness is broken by a sharp smack from the lunch lady, who furiously yells at him to get out of the way if he isn't going to eat. Shaken, Dante takes his tray and numbly finds a place to sit, his mind reeling from the encounter. He sits completely frozen, a prisoner of his own terror and confusion. As he stares blankly into space, another inmate brazenly reaches over and begins eating food from his tray. But Dante can't focus on his stolen meal. His thoughts are consumed by the guard's dead eyes. He frantically wonders if the man was even a real guard at all. He tries to reason with himself. The man was wearing a guard's uniform and he definitely had a badge. He had to be legitimate. But if he was real, where were the other officers? Why couldn't he see anyone else in authority? A horrifying thought creeps in. What if no one is actually looking for him? The hope he felt just moments ago dissolves into chilling, suffocating dread. The realization hits Dante like a physical blow. Something is seriously, fundamentally wrong with his situation. He's completely screwed. A chilling thought surfaces. At this rate, he might be trapped in this place forever. His gaze falls on the hulking prisoner beside him, and it all clicks into place. Everything the man had told him was true. As the prisoner turns to face him, a desperate idea forms in Dante's mind. He addresses the man, calling him his student. Forcing a strained smile, Dante reminds the prisoner of his supposed desire to learn how to grow sweet potatoes. This was it, his absolute last resort. He had to make this work. He lays out his proposition. He will teach the prisoner everything he wants to know about cultivating sweet potatoes, as many as he could ever want. But there's a condition. In exchange for this knowledge, the prisoner must help him get out of this hellhole. Dante resolves to exploit what he perceives as the man's simple-mindedness to secure his own freedom. The prisoner gets Dante's attention, and Dante responds, waiting to see if his gambit has paid off. The prisoner's voice is laced with disbelief. He asks if Dante really takes him for an idiot, to be swayed by a mere offer concerning sweet potatoes. Dante backpedals frantically, insisting that wasn't his intention. He reminds the prisoner that he was brought here specifically to teach this skill. Once the lesson is over, there's no reason for him to stay. He argues that the prisoner has a responsibility to see him released, since he's the one who brought him here in the first place. The prisoner says nothing, his silence hanging heavy in the air, leaving Dante's desperate words unanswered. Finally, the prisoner breaks the silence with a chilling revelation. There's only one way to get out of this place. One must become the supreme leader. Dante Kang reels from the statement, trying to clarify if the prisoner means becoming the actual boss of the entire prison. The prisoner scoffs, dismissing the idea and claiming someone like Dante could never achieve it. Dante retorts that he has no desire for such a position anyway. A grim realization begins to dawn on Dante as he connects the dots, asking if this means only the supreme leader is allowed to contact the outside world. Raising his fork, the prisoner lays out the prison's stark reality. One must either ascend to the top or fall into ruin. That is the only way out. Frustrated by the cryptic words, Dante demands that the prisoner speak plainly so he can understand. But the prisoner coldly cuts him off, declaring an end to the questions. Dante finally accepts that the prisoner has no intention of helping him. With his decision made, Dante rises to his feet, preparing to leave. He declares there's no longer any point in staying near him, and vows to escape the filthy, horrible place immediately. He issues a final warning, promising the prisoner will regret this. Once Dante is free, he will ensure his former cellmate cannot escape the judgment of the law. The source of his confidence is powerful, his family. Dante scoffs, dismissing the prisoner as life-sentence trash who should be left to rot forever. Suddenly, an unknown voice cuts through the tension, calling out for a teacher's. As Dante turns, another voice is heard, this time calling for Mr. Kang and asking if he's there. A flicker of hope ignites in the oppressive darkness of the prison. Relief floods through Dante as he realizes what's happening. The rescue team he was waiting for has finally arrived. The voices of the rescuers grow louder, shouting for everyone to come toward them. It seems salvation has arrived. Overwhelmed with relief, Dante Kang screams, desperately trying to signal his location to the rescuers. He frantically identifies himself, shouting out his name, Kang Dante, his age of 32, and his profession as a public high school science teacher. With tears streaming down his face, he continues to call out, certain that his harrowing ordeal is finally over. But the figures that emerge are not rescuers. Dante's hope instantly turns to confusion as he realizes he's facing a group of prisoners. He stands before a menacing group of inmates, their leader an inhumanly tall man who looms over everyone like a monument of flesh and bone. A slow, unsettling smile spreads across the leader's face, extinguishing any last flicker of hope within Dante. As Dante looks up at the towering figure, his body freezes, gripped by a sudden and profound terror. The colossal man leans down, his voice a low rumble as he greets Dante, casually remarking that it's been a long time since they last met. He asks if his former teacher remembers him, specifically from the sweet potato class, leaving Dante completely baffled by the strange question. Then, a jolt of recognition pierces through his confusion, and the horrifying memory begins to surface. Dante remembers him now. He could never forget seeing someone so impossibly huge for the very first time. Around them, the other prisoners begin to murmur in hushed, reverent tones, their eyes fixed on the massive man. They whisper his title with a mix of fear and respect, identifying him as Shoulder Hyung. The whispers confirm his terrifying status within the prison's brutal hierarchy. He is one of the 6 shoulders. This is one of the 6 shoulders of Cell Zero, a feared and powerful figure known throughout the prison as the Tower. Dante's desperate call for salvation has led him straight into the hands of a monster. A horrifying memory suddenly surfaces in Dante's mind. He remembers seeing this man before and witnessing how he slaughtered the security guards. In the flashback, the prison guards had opened fire on the tower, their weapons blazing. With cold indifference, the tower had snatched another prisoner and used him as a human shield against the hail of bullets. The unfortunate inmate was torn apart, his life extinguished in a heartbeat to protect the monster behind him. The tower had calmly questioned the guards' actions, remarking on how rude it was for them to use guns when the prisoners had been completely stripped down. He had then declared that if they weren't going to show any manners, he saw no reason to bother with them either. What happened next was grotesque and surreal as the tower plunged his own hand deep into his mouth. In an unbelievable act, he pulled a massive, gleaming blade out from his throat, a weapon he had concealed within his own body. With just a single brutal strike, he effortlessly cut down the soldiers. Back in the present, the weight of this terrifying memory crashes down on Dante, forcing him to his knees in despair. His voice shaking, Dante looks up at the imposing figure and weakly asks why the tower was looking for him. The tower's response is chillingly simple. He explains that there can only be one reason: they must continue the class. The tower adds offhandedly that he's no longer interested in sweet potatoes. With a grim sense of purpose, he announces that it's time for a real lesson. He then extends his hand toward Dante, revealing 3 glowing blue orbs nestled in his palm. The tower explains that this is what he calls making fog. The surrounding prisoners stare at the glowing lumps, their hushed whispers confirming its identity: fog. Someone in the crowd marvels that there are 4 huge pieces of it. Dante is stunned into silence as a sudden thought begins to connect the pieces. His mind flashes back to the classroom, to the masked prisoner who had impatiently cut through the lesson, demanding to be taught how to make this very substance. He remembers the man's intense focus on this thing he called fog. Returning to the present, Dante asks what the material is. The tower looks at him with genuine surprise, questioning how he could possibly not know. He scoffs at the idea, finding it unbelievable that a science teacher, someone who is supposed to know everything, could be so ignorant. Dante insists that he has never seen anything like this in the outside world. In response, the tower coldly states that they took classes for it. He clarifies that the classes were about the fog, revealing that 6 high-ranking prisoners with the title of Shoulders had gathered just for Dante's lecture. With a chilling finality, the tower adds that their purpose was to take him back. Acting dismissively, the tower grabs Dante, deciding to handle the situation himself. He then shoves a glowing blue substance, the illicit drug known as fog, in Dante's face, suggesting it's time for him to learn how things work. Dante can only stare in disbelief. Completely bewildered, Dante demands to know what the strange substance is. A wave of revulsion hits him, and he mutters with disgust how much he hates it. Unlike Dante, the other prisoners react with intense craving, drooling at the mere sight of the blue fog. In a defiant burst, Dante slaps the fog from the tower's hand, shouting that he doesn't want it. As the small packet sails through the air, the attention of every inmate in the yard instantly shifts. A palpable tension fills the air as every prisoner locks their gaze onto the discarded drug. For a single, silent moment, the entire yard is frozen with anticipation. Then, chaos erupts. The prisoners descend into a desperate, violent scramble to claim the fog for themselves. Dante is left completely stunned, watching the savage reaction his defiant act has caused. The inmates viciously fight one another, their desperate screams echoing as they all claim the fog is theirs. The tower observes the pandemonium with a cold expression, turning to Dante to point out that everyone clearly wants the fog. He continues, explaining that in this place, fog is as valuable as gold, a true blessing from the gods. Suddenly, a commotion erupts. The other prisoners are in an uproar, screaming that an old man has just swallowed a lump of the precious fog. They furiously demand he spit it out immediately. Yet, the one who consumed the glowing blue substance stands tall amidst the chaos, a strange resolve on his face. The desperation in the air curdles into violence as the other inmates descend upon him, beginning to bite and tear at his flesh. His body is ripped to pieces by the ravenous crowd, a horrifying display of the prison's brutal reality. But through the agony, a serene smile remains on his face, as if he's already somewhere far beyond the pain. Watching from a distance, Tower scoffs at the so-called people of Tofu Village getting so worked up over a single lump. He remarks that the old man is either going to experience heaven today, or, if there were more of the fog, he might even gain some incredible new talent from the experience. He then turns his attention to Dante, holding a glowing blue lump of fog to his lips and coolly asking if he's interested in trying it for himself. Dante trembles uncontrollably, the blue substance staining his mouth as pure terror grips him. His body violently rejects the fog and he retches, a wave of nausea and disgust overwhelming him. Broken, Dante begins to cry, wondering why he was brought to such a terrible place. He pleads desperately, just wanting to go home. Tower seems taken aback by this reaction, questioning what Dante just said, but Dante can only repeat his plea, begging to be allowed to return home. He insists that he can't do whatever is being asked of him, claiming he's never seen anything like this before. He's not a scientist, he cries, he's just a teacher. Tower dismisses his panic as ridiculous, retorting that he once saw a teacher in a drama who made and sold good medicine. Dante frantically tries to argue, screaming that the person in the show was a chemistry professor and that he is completely different. In a final desperate cry, Dante clarifies that he doesn't even have a doctorate, he's just a simple high school teacher, completely out of his depth. For a moment, the towering figure stood in absolute silence, processing Dante's shocking confession. Number way, well, then, the tower's voice cut through the tension, coldly asking if Dante was admitting to being completely incompetent. Dante could only stare, bewildered. The tower seethed with disappointment, revealing that he had been the first to find the supposed doctor and believed he had won a grand prize. His ambition laid bare, the tower confessed he thought this discovery would make him the supreme leader. As he spoke, a blade slid ominously from his mouth. Dante's eyes widened in sheer terror as he watched the weapon emerge. Looming over him, the tower prepared to strike, snarling that Dante had turned out to be nothing more than a useless fraud. The immediate threat sends Dante's mind reeling into the past, where the voice of his father echoes, venomously questioning how such a worthless son could have ever received a teaching certificate. The memory solidifies, showing both his parents berating him. His father expressed disgust at the idea of Dante teaching children, reminding him that no one in their prestigious family held anything less than a doctorate. The verbal assault continued, his father labeling him a blockhead who had stained the family name after failing to publish a single paper in 6 long years. His mother pleaded with him, calling his new path an act of cowardice and begging him to try for his thesis just 1 more year. In the memory, Dante's brother intervened, telling their parents to stop and questioning what was so terrible about being a teacher. He urged them to let Dante have this one thing, pointing out the immense pressure he must have been under after failing for 6 years. He concluded with a piercing remark that knowing one's place is the most important thing. The painful memory fades on Dante's own reflection, the crushing weight of having a father so famous he was a regular face on television. It wasn't just his father. His mother held a doctorate in law, adding another layer of academic expectation to the suffocating family dynamic. Even his brother was a prodigy, having become the president of a psychology society at a remarkably young age. In his own professional life, Dante was respected, a confident figure standing at the lectern. But that respect evaporated the moment he returned home, where he felt he was treated worse than an animal. The memory sharpens, focusing on a tense dinner with his family, the air thick with judgment. His father holds up a document from the International Penal Correction Center, his voice sharp as he demands to know what it is. Dante explains that it's a teaching position at a prison organized by the United Nations, noting that the pay is quite considerable. His brother's eyes light up with cruel amusement, recognizing the infamous facility by its nickname, Fogland. He excitedly remarks that it's where all the world's craziest people are sent. Dante quietly objects, reminding them that people still live there, but his brother just utters his name with a dismissive air. His mother chimes in, questioning if he really needs to go so far away. She assures him she's perfectly content with the steady income he already makes at his current school. His father cuts through the conversation, his voice cold and hard as he repeatedly demands to know why Dante is doing this. He doesn't wait for an answer, immediately dismissing his son's career choice as nothing more than a ridiculous stunt. Dante tries to explain his reasoning, stating his belief that providing learning opportunities to those who've had few chances is a valuable mission for any educator. His heartfelt conviction is met with a dismissive scoff from his smirking brother. The brother offers a fake apology, pretending to have spilled something on his shirt before laughing at how ridiculously grand Dante's ideals sound. He then lectures Dante, condescendingly informing him that his worldview simply isn't professional. Dante's brother continues his verbal assault, claiming Dante's drive is nothing more than an impulse born from a desperate need to be recognized. He cruelly dissects Dante's motivations, suggesting it wasn't a conscious choice to follow a different path with a unique mission, but a pretense to hide his failure to earn a doctorate. The brother scoffs that Dante only acts like their equal, using eccentric behavior to justify his own incompetence. Dante's annoyance is palpable, but his brother presses on, questioning why Dante judges everyone by his own flawed standards, before patronizingly claiming to be worried. He labels Dante's actions as pure recklessness, driven by a deep-seated inferiority complex. This recklessness, his brother concludes, is simply proof of stupidity. In a moment of reflection, Dante finds himself agreeing. The memory fades as we snap back to the brutal present. Dante screams, terrified for his life, his brother's words echoing in his mind. He was right, and Dante had been a fool. At that very moment, Tower's sword arcs down towards him, the lethal consequence of his foolish choices. Dante stumbles backward, the chilling certainty washing over him. He is about to die. He realizes he will perish miserably in this filthy, ugly prison, all because his lack of learning had led him to this point. His final, fragmented thought is of himself, the architect of his own demise. Meanwhile, the prisoner who had aided Dante before makes his move, quietly picking up a simple fork from the table. In a flash, he acts with stunning speed. Just before Tower's blade can slice into Dante, the fork flies through the air like a projectile, piercing straight through Tower's hand. The surrounding prisoners can only stare, utterly surprised by the impossible feat. With his hand impaled, Tower drops his sword and Dante is saved from certain death. Tower hisses in agony, clutching his heavily injured hand. In that same instant, the mysterious prisoner lunges forward and grabs Tower by the head, whose mind reels in confused disbelief, wondering how anyone could have possibly brought a gun into the prison. With shocking strength, he yanks Tower's head, pulling the larger man through the air. Every single person watching is frozen in a state of absolute shock. In that critical moment, the unassuming prisoner had acted decisively. With shocking speed, Dante's quiet companion launched a vicious kick, connecting squarely with Tower's long, exposed neck. A sickening crack echoed as the spine in Tower's neck gave way under the overwhelming force of the blow. The behemoth's balance was instantly shattered, his massive frame beginning to teeter uncontrollably. Wounded, tattered, and broken, the once invincible figure began his long, slow fall to the ground. A wave of disbelief washed over the watching prisoners, their minds struggling to process the impossible sight before them. It was an unbelievable spectacle, like a legendary monument finally crumbling into dust. Tower crashed face first into the dirt, and a collective gasp went through the crowd as they realized that he had truly collapsed. Even Dante, the one who had just been saved, stared in utter confusion, completely bewildered by this sudden and overwhelming display of strength. As Dante's companions stood firm, the other prisoners erupted, their voices echoing in a chaotic roar. They declared that a new shoulder had just been born, a new power to be reckoned with in the brutal hierarchy of the prison. The initial shock gave way to a frenzied scramble as the inmates, grunting in surprise, surged toward the center of the yard, drawn to this sudden, violent shift in power. Their voices merged into a single demanding chant, pressing the newly risen figure to declare his name and claim his title as a shoulder. But the powerful man ignored the crowd entirely. He turned to the bewildered Dante, calling him teacher and insisting that they had to leave immediately, leaving Dante even more stunned. Without waiting for an answer, he hoisted Dante onto his shoulder and began to run. As they fled, a wave of recognition rippled through the prisoners, who began to shout his name, the teacher. Away from the chaos, the first coherent thought surfaced in Dante's mind as he clung to the man's back. He questioned if he was truly, impossibly, still alive. The realization washed over him in waves of disbelief. He repeated the thought to himself like a mantra, trying to grasp the fact that he had survived the ordeal. Dante stared at his mysterious companion, and a startling realization began to dawn on him. He finally understood that this person wasn't just capable, he was overwhelmingly strong, possessing a power that seemed out of place even in this brutal environment. His mind reeled back to their first meeting, and he couldn't help but wonder if the story about the sweet potato had been a complete lie to hide this incredible strength. Dante finally found his voice and asked why he had even signed up for the deadly class in the first place. He assumed it had to be for the same reason as everyone else, to get his hands on the glowing blue drug known as fog. Dante's companion turned the question around, asking if Dante himself could create the fog. Startled by the inquiry, Dante quickly and nervously denied it. A fresh wave of terror washed over him. Convinced he had just angered this impossibly powerful man, Dante immediately began pleading for his life, apologizing over and over. But Dante's companion's explanation was shockingly mundane. He stated that he had only joined the line because he heard they were giving out new clothes, a reason so simple it left Dante utterly speechless. He recounted a memory of seeing the long queue of prisoners, noting how the line was blocking the entire street. In the flashback, the teacher had simply approached one of the prisoners in the queue and told him to get out of the way, prompting a confused look from the other inmate. Another prisoner immediately objects, telling the teacher not to cut as everyone else is waiting in line. Dante's companion, observing the commotion, wonders what is happening. The inmate explains that outsiders have arrived to teach a class and that the competition for a spot is fierce, urging Dante's companion to get in line with them. Dante's companion initially expresses disinterest in the class. However, his mind changes when the other prisoner mentions that new clothes are being distributed, adding that they must look presentable for the teacher. At the prospect of new clothes, Dante's companion quickly joins the line, buzzing with an excitement he hasn't felt in years, as events like this are incredibly rare. He muses hopefully that perhaps they might even learn something amazing from these new teachers. The flashback fades, returning to the present moment. Dante asks his companion what his reason was for signing up for that class, then pointedly questions why he chose to save him. The companion bluntly denies saving Dante at all. He clarifies that he wasn't protecting a person, he was protecting his new clothes. He continues his complaint, pointing out that Dante not only failed to teach him anything of value, but had also humiliatingly urinated on himself, leaving Dante speechless. His companion's frustration peaks as he yells that Dante soiled his brand new clothes, a fact that leaves Dante in a state of shock. Later, in the Stark shower room, the aftermath of a brutal confrontation is evident. Dante now wears a new set of clothes, taken from a defeated inmate. Dante takes a quiet moment, reflecting on the desperate measures he took to resolve his clothing situation. As they wash the soiled garments, Dante privately admits to himself that while his methods were harsh, he did manage to acquire his own set of clothes. He promises his companion he will wash and return his outfit quickly. Dante's curiosity is piqued. He asks his companion why he kept his old, ragged uniform even after receiving a new one, wondering aloud if the tattered garment held some kind of sentimental value. The companion simply states that the old clothes are his as well. Dante, confused by this logic, presses him, asking why he wouldn't just throw away something so filthy. Pointing to the uniform he is wearing, the companion explains that it has the name 182, which makes it his. He then gestures toward the clothes being washed, pointing out that they are also marked with the name 182 and are therefore also his. With unshakable certainty, he declares that since both outfits bear his name, they both belong to him. A flicker of understanding crosses Dante's face. He realizes that even the dirty clothes are precious to this man. Wondering if his companion is physically unable to clean them, Dante quickly offers to wash the old outfit for him. Without another word, Dante takes the man's filthy clothes and begins to wash them alongside his own, a frustrated sigh escaping his lips. The simple act of cleaning provides a brief, almost surreal moment of domesticity amidst the prison's grime. After they finish, they hang the damp clothes to dry inside their cramped cell, a small victory against the filth. Later, as time ticks by, Dante's anxiety begins to creep back in. He notes that the hour has passed, and his thoughts start to race. A full day has gone by, trapped in this cell, and the weight of his situation presses down on him. The idea of escape feels distant, a more immediate threat looms. He knows the monstrous figures known as the Shoulders are actively hunting for him. He worries they might have pinpointed his location from the earlier chaos, solidifying his resolve to leave this cell by tomorrow. A pang of regret hits him. He realizes he probably should have forced down that disgusting soup when he had the chance. Just then, as hunger gnaws at him, his gaze falls upon something on the grimy floor. It's a sweet potato, a small, unexpected potential source of food. Dante cautiously glances over to see if his companion is asleep. He briefly considers the absurdity of trading with sweet potatoes, dismissing the idea before his hunger takes over. Feeling a wave of humiliation at being reduced to this, he reaches for the sweet potato. Survival, he tells himself, has to come first. But just as his fingers are about to close around it, his companion lunges forward, slapping the sweet potato clean out of his hand. Stunned, Dante stammers, trying to explain his desperation. He pleads that he is just incredibly hungry and asks if he could have even a small piece. His companion bluntly refuses. Dante presses, begging for just one bite, arguing that it's just a crop and it should be fine. But the man is unyielding, declaring firmly that the sweet potato belongs to him. Dante can hardly believe it, finding the entire situation completely absurd. He challenges the man, questioning if he actually intends to grow it, pointing out that he wouldn't even know how. His companion ignores the logic, his voice low and serious as he delivers a chilling ultimatum. If Dante kills his sweet potato, he will kill Dante. Dante is left speechless and furious, internally mocking the man for his misplaced pride in a sweet potato, thinking him a complete and utter fool. Dante internally scoffs at the man, thinking his vocabulary is at a kindergarten level and his behavior is almost primitive. His companion, panicked, urges him to hide the sweet potato. A smirk plays on Dante's lips as he realizes this simple man's foolishness is actually quite favorable for his own plans. He begins to plant a seed of doubt, asking his companion if he ever considered that the sweet potato might already be doomed. Confused and worried, The man immediately asks what Dante means by that. Dante lays his trap, reminding the man that he cut the sweet potato to engrave a name on it. He claims that this very act is what made the sweet potato sick. He continues his elaborate lie, explaining that the wound will cause it to contract a terrible disease known as browning. As Dante watches his companions start to freak out, he knows his manipulation is working perfectly. Just as the man's panic peaks, Dante casually mentions that, of course, there is a way to revive it. He then feigns reluctance, saying that since their earlier trade failed, it's difficult for him to simply give away the solution. After letting him squirm, Dante offers a single, critical piece of information. The sweet potato needs sunlight. He explains the core problem of their environment. Fogland's common fog is so dense that it blocks the sun. To save his precious sweet potato, the man will have to find a place where the fog is thinner. His companion hopefully suggests that Tofu Village has the least fog around, but Dante quickly shuts that down. Pointing to some damp, hanging clothes, he argues that it's clearly not enough sunlight. Dante reveals the true price of this information. He tells the man that, at the very minimum, he must travel all the way to the gate in front of the fortress. He clarifies the immense danger of the task, emphasizing that this gate is the very entrance to the entire Fogland prison. Meanwhile, in another grim corner of the prison, a different story is unfolding. A man known as Tower, a craftsman of some sort, grunts with intense effort as he works on a complex and mysterious contraption. The mysterious contraption is revealed to be a complex brace supporting Tower's broken neck. Immobilized, he impatiently asks how long it will take for him to heal. One of the other prisoners tries to comfort him, claiming they brought the best architect for the job. Tower lashes out, calling the man an idiot for not bringing a doctor instead. He curses, his mind replaying the incident, struggling to comprehend what just happened to him. Tower reflects on his own power, convinced that his long-term use of the fog had made his spinal bones stronger than reinforced steel. He had taken particular pride in the toughness of his neck bone, yet his attacker managed to break it with a single, shocking blow. Filled with rage, Tower decides the so-called teacher is finished. His new obsession is to hunt down the person responsible, certain that this upstart is monopolizing the fog somewhere in the prison. Suddenly, a voice cuts in, confirming the rumor that Tower had found the teacher. Tower looks up, confused by the sudden intrusion. A masked prisoner appears from the side, his presence immediately shifting the atmosphere in the room. The other prisoners recoil in fear, wondering how the man appeared so silently. The masked figure ignores them, continuing his thought that it's also true. Tower's famously proud neck has been broken. Tower sneers at the intruder, calling him a rat for sneaking into his hideout. The masked man calmly reminds him of their alliance and their agreement to share any information about the teacher. Tower dismisses the idea of an alliance as meaningless talk, boldly declaring that he alone will become the supreme leader of this place. In a blur of motion, the masked prisoner snatches the architect's hammer and points it menacingly at Tower. He coldly tells Tower that his ambition is far too great for the talent he possesses. All of Tower's bravado vanishes. He pleads with the man to wait, questioning if he would really be so cowardly as to attack an injured person. The masked man remains completely unfazed by Tower's desperate words, remarking that encountering bastards of his kind always stirs something within him. It's an overwhelming desire to completely crush them. Before Tower can react, the man smashes his neck with devastating power. In that moment, his true identity is revealed. He is Hound, a Shoulders from Section 0. In the grim aftermath of a brutal confrontation, every last member of Tower's group lies dead, their faction wiped out. The lone figure responsible for the carnage, a man known only as Hound, turns his back on the scene, his work evidently finished. He wasn't working alone. Another group, his own crew, waits for him nearby. With a quiet command, he signals for them to move out. A menacing tattoo of a wolf's skull marks Hound's back as a symbol of his identity. He announces their location, identifying the area as Tofu Village. Having concluded their violent business, Hound's gang mounts their bikes, their engines roaring to life as they depart. The story shifts its focus, moving to an entirely different part of this oppressive world. Here we meet two other individuals, Dante Kang and a quiet companion, as they walk through the bleak landscape. Both men are burdened with heavy black bags. Dante struggles with the weight, complaining about its contents. He asks his companion if the bag has the name 182 written on it, and the man confirms that it is his. Dante then addresses his companion as Mr. 182, asking what his actual name is. The man replies with a single, stark identifier, one arm. Taken aback, Dante asks if he's joking. But his companion, now known as One Arm, calmly states that it is simply what people call him. Dante presses, asking if he doesn't have a real name. One Arm merely repeats that his moniker is what he is called. Finding the name uncivilized, Dante decides he'll just continue to call him Mr. 182. Dante continues his interrogation, now focusing on the mask covering the man's face. He asks Mr. 182 why he wears it, speculating if he's a thief or a robber, and pointedly asks how he ended up in a place like Fogland. The masked man gives a cryptic, unsettling response, simply stating that he has always been here. Dante is taken aback, confused by the strange answer, and questioning what he could possibly mean by that. 182 deflects, turning the questions back on Dante. He finds it odd that a teacher would ask so many questions. Dante defensively retorts that teachers are people too. Growing impatient, 182 criticizes Dante for talking too much and having a loud voice. Dante brushes it off as an occupational hazard, but his companion cuts him short, bluntly telling him to shut up. Sometime later, the two have walked in tense silence, the oppressive atmosphere of the prison weighing on them. They continue their trek through the desolate, unchanging corridors of the prison. Finally, Dante slumps to the ground, exhausted. He declares that they need to rest for a bit, admitting he's so hungry he has no energy left to continue. He asks how much farther it is to the entrance, his frustration growing. He complains that it feels like they've been walking for 2 hours, yet they keep seeing the same monotonous path over and over again. 182 drops a bombshell, calmly admitting that he doesn't actually know the way. Dante can only stare in disbelief. Dante's shock quickly turns to rage. He demands to know why 182 is only telling him this now, exclaiming that their 2-hour walk was for nothing and the whole situation is driving him crazy. Completely spent, Dante collapses onto the ground, refusing to go on. He gives 182 an ultimatum: either carry him or go find something to eat. His companion cryptically remarks that Dante will have to move if he wants to save his sweet potato. But then, without any warning, 182 suddenly falls to the ground himself, collapsing in a heap. Stunned by the abrupt turn of events, Dante can only look down at the motionless figure, bewilderedly asking what he's doing. Dante cautiously approaches the still figure, his voice tight with confusion as he asks 102 what he thinks he's doing. Getting no response, he anxiously removes 182's mask, his concern escalating into alarm. The sight revealed beneath the mask leaves Dante completely stunned, frozen in silent shock. 102's face is deathly pale and drenched in sweat. Dante can only whisper his name in horror. Panic begins to set in. Dante lightly taps 102's head, questioning what could be wrong and frantically urging him to get a hold of himself. He glances back, a heavy silence hanging in the oppressive air of the prison. His gaze falls upon the ominous Fogland surrounding them, and a chilling thought grips him, a desperate plea not to be left alone. This fear explodes into raw desperation. Dante grabs the unconscious 162, shaking him violently and screaming at the man to open his eyes and not dare leave him alone here. As Dante's final, desperate plea fades, a figure suddenly descends from the sky, hurtling toward the ground at an incredible speed. The mysterious person lands with an unsettling silence, positioning themselves directly behind Dante and the fallen 182. The sudden presence finally cuts through Dante's panic, and he becomes aware of the intruder standing just behind him. Without a word, the stranger slowly reaches out a hand towards Dante, their intentions shrouded in mystery. Instead of striking him, the person surprisingly pinches Dante's eye open, examining it closely under the dim light. A look of surprise crosses the stranger's face. He seems genuinely taken aback, murmuring his astonishment that Dante appears to be a normal person. Dante, still weak and disoriented, can only manage a confused sound. The stranger quickly apologizes for his strange behavior. He explains that a loud noise drew his curiosity, prompting him to investigate what was happening. The scene shifts, finding Dante not in the grimy alley, but inside the mysterious person's dwelling. In a display of pure, desperate hunger, Dante devours the food set before him, barely pausing to breathe. His host watches with a hint of concern, cautioning him that eating so quickly will surely give him indigestion. A woman's voice gently urges him to eat slowly, reassuring him that there is plenty more food available. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Dante thanks them, believing they have saved his life. A thought crystallizes in his mind: these are normal people. The man introduces himself as Rambutan, and the woman confirms her name is Likey. Dante gives his own name, Dante Kang, and expresses his profound relief. It's the first time since arriving in this place that he has met anyone with whom he can have a normal conversation. His surprise deepens as he processes the situation, realizing with a start that there's even a woman here, a sight he clearly did not expect. The person, Likey, notices his surprise and asks if she really looks like a woman. Caught off guard, Dante asks if she isn't. Likey explains that she cut her hair short to appear more masculine, because being a woman in Tofel village makes a person stand out in all the wrong ways. The other man, Rambutan, chimes in, explaining that they came from the inside. He describes it as a place where the rigid concept of blocks dissolves the closer one gets to the center. Dante, curious, asks if the center is filled with more normal people like them. Rambutan just laughs, clarifying that Tofel Village is simply where all the losers who've been pushed aside end up. Changing the subject, Rambutan sizes Dante up, asking if he's a new arrival and, more pointedly, if he has done the fog yet. Dante's reply is unexpected. He reveals that he's not actually an inmate, a statement that leaves Rambutan completely baffled. He continues, explaining that the details are difficult to share given the complicated circumstances he's in. Then he drops a bombshell, stating plainly that he was kidnapped. He gestures to the unconscious figure on the ground, identifying him as the one who abducted him. Rambutan is incredulous, struggling to comprehend what he's hearing. He asks for clarification, wondering if Dante is really claiming he was kidnapped and brought into the Fogland. Dante simply shakes his head, confirming the unbelievable truth. A look of shock crosses their faces as a realization dawns on Rambutan. He connects the dots, asking if Dante was the one abducted during the infamous teacher kidnapping operation. Now it's Dante's turn to be stunned. He demands to know how they could possibly have information about that. Rambutan explains that everyone knows about it. The enforcers orchestrated the whole affair, even taking over classes to ensure no one else could attend. Dante is furious, wondering what the administration could have been doing to let it happen. Rambutan stares, realizing Dante is the central figure of the whole ordeal. This makes Dante suspicious, and he bluntly asks if they're spies for the enforcers, a charge Rambutan quickly denies. Lychee presses for an explanation, noting she'd never seen an enforcer behave that way. Dante agrees, confirming his suspicion that the man wasn't a real enforcer at all. He then reveals the absurd reason for his ordeal. The man had kidnapped him simply to learn how to grow a sweet potato. The explanation is so ridiculous that Rambutan can't help but scoff. Rambutan bursts into loud laughter, shocked that the entire conflict was over a sweet potato and not the illicit substance known as fog. He apologizes for the outburst, but Dante internally observes their reaction, seeing them as normal people laughing at the dark comedy of his situation. This genuine moment of sympathetic laughter makes Dante emotional, and he begins to tear up. For the first time, he feels a sense of connection, realizing they are just ordinary people reacting to his unbelievable circumstances. Noticing his tears, Lychee tells Rambutan to stop laughing. Rambutan then gets serious, asking if Dante is being held captive. Dante clarifies that he isn't, explaining that for now, he's just traveling with the man as a makeshift bodyguard. Dante adds that his companion collapsed suddenly, and he assumes it must be from heatstroke. Hearing this, Lychee immediately recognizes the true cause, uttering a single, ominous word, limbo. Rambutan elaborates on her grim diagnosis, explaining that limbo is a severe withdrawal symptom for those addicted to the fog. He points out that the numerous people they saw sprawled on the streets were all suffering from the same fate, having fallen into limbo because they couldn't get a dose of fog. He delivers a chilling warning. While people can eventually snap out of it, if limbo repeats itself too many times, their brains begin to melt. The horrifying reality starts to sink in for Dante. He finally asks the question that reveals his ignorance. What, exactly, is this fog? At his question, Rambutan and Lychee exchange a knowing glance, silently acknowledging just how little Dante understands about the world he stumbled into. Rambutan turns back to him, confirming what their look already implied. Dante truly knows nothing about the grim reality of Fogland. Rambutan begins to explain the grim truth of the prison's underworld. He clarifies that fog is not weather, but a drug, a divine medicine that has the power to grant talent to those who use it. He continues, describing how it can amplify a talent someone never knew they possessed, or even manifest a skill they have always desperately yearned for. Dante can hardly believe it, questioning if such a thing is truly possible. Rambutan assures him that it is, and that the drug's true power allows a person to transcend the very limits of what it means to be human. With a determined look, Rambutan reveals their grand ambition. Lychee finishes the sentence, her voice firm. They intend to use this power to break out of prison. The sheer audacity of their plan leaves Dante completely stunned and speechless. At that very moment, elsewhere, in the oppressive labyrinth of Fogland, a figure known as Hound arrives with a purpose. He stands before the cell of another prisoner, a person known only as AT2. Hound seems to be tracking someone, muttering that his quarry, whom he calls the teacher, could not have possibly gone far. But Hound is not alone in his search. An example: the teacher is a person of great interest, and others are on the hunt as well, including the ruthless enforcers of Block Zero and the notorious Bone Eater. Another shadowy figure, a man called Nunface, also joins the desperate search, raising the stakes for whoever finds the teacher first. Another shadowy player, a man known as Fuzzyback, also emerges, drawn into the widening search. Meanwhile, word spreads through the prison's network, pinpointing Drillhead's location to a place called Tofel Village. Rambutan, filled with a newfound resolve, declares to Dante that with their current power, they finally have the means to break out of the prison. The word escape catches Dante completely by surprise, the sheer audacity of the idea momentarily stunning him. Seeing his opening, Rambutan formally invites Dante to join them, pressing him for a decision on whether he'll take part in their escape. Dante, however, cautiously declines the offer. He explains that as a civilian, his first priority should be to contact the guards or the operating bureau, not to get clumsily involved with a prisoner escape. He lays out the severe consequences, reasoning that even if their plan succeeded, he would be branded a criminal for aiding and abetting them. And if the escape were to fail, the outcome would be far, far worse. In that scenario, he concludes with chilling certainty, he would simply vanish without a trace, never to be seen again. Rambutan grimly confirms his fears, stating that no one, not the operating bureau or any other authority, would come looking for him. He challenges Dante's hope, asking if he truly believes anyone would willingly venture into a place like Fogland. The harsh reality of his words leaves Dante speechless. Rambutan then reveals the prison's most insidious trap, something he calls fog addiction. He warns that one wrong move is all it takes to become completely unable to live without the substance. He directs the warning to Dante personally, who protests in confusion, insisting that he's never used fog and never plans to. But Rambutan dismisses his naivete, explaining that personal will has nothing to do with it. He asks Dante to consider how long he's been inside, only 2 or 3 days. He urges Dante to think about the thick, ever-present mist that hangs in the air all around them. Rambutan then delivers the horrifying truth. The dense fog itself is made of fine particles of the drug, fog. The revelation hits Dante like a physical blow. He realizes with dawning horror that he's been involuntarily consuming the addictive substance just by breathing, leaving him shocked and utterly distraught. Rambutan begins to explain the grim reality of the fog, describing it as a supposed gift that grants talent. He clarifies that while countless particles are needed to manifest any ability, becoming addicted is a much simpler, more insidious process. He reveals that the fog particles alone are enough to cause addiction, slowly and silently seeping into a person's lungs with every breath. Once inside, Rambutan warns, the substance creates a relentless craving that will constantly demand more and more of the fog. The horrifying implication dawns on Dante, and in a surge of pure terror, he instinctively covers his mouth, as if he could stop the poison already inside him. Rambutan adds another layer to the nightmare, explaining that if an addict cannot obtain more fog, they will eventually descend into a state known as limbo. Dante's mind races, connecting the horrifying dots. He stammers, asking the question he dreads the answer to, is he already addicted? His panic escalates into despair as he realizes his fate might already be sealed, that he's completely and utterly doomed. But Rambutan quickly clarifies that Dante still has a chance. His situation isn't entirely hopeless just yet. He explains that limbo is merely the first stage of withdrawal, the grim precursor to when the real suffering begins. Rambutan admits he can't predict when it will happen, as everyone's tolerance is different, but he stresses that there is absolutely no time for Dante to relax. Dante turns to Lychee and Rambutan, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. He asks them if they are in the same boat, already addicted and with no hope of escape. Lychee meets his gaze and confirms his fears with a chilling calmness, admitting that yes, they are already screwed. She adds to the oppressive hopelessness of their situation, stating that in all her time here, she has never once heard of anyone who managed to leave this prison alive. Still, Lychee clings to a sliver of hope, musing that perhaps a natural recovery could happen in the distant future, or that an antidote might be developed if they could only expose the truth of this place. It's this sliver of hope that fuels their promise to each other. They will not let themselves die in this hellhole. Rambutan echoes her sentiment, vowing that even if they fall into limbo for the rest of their lives and their memories of each other fade away, they will somehow find a way to meet again, together under a clear sky, a vision of a happy future flashing between them. Watching them, Dante feels a sense of annoyance at their seemingly naive hope, but he can't deny the raw, genuine power of their conviction. As they embrace, he acknowledges that they truly mean it. But their tender moment is unknowingly observed, as deep within the cell, the prisoner known as 82 begins to wake. As his eyes adjust, the prisoner known as 182 sees them, his expression hardening with clear annoyance at the intrusion. Dante Kang is startled by the sudden, hostile gaze, letting out a groan of frustration. The realization hits him with a jolt. Their most dangerous cellmate is now awake. His mind races, questioning what they should do. He considers that this might even save him some time, as he no longer needs to waste effort on the sweet potato. Dante weighs a dangerous idea. What if he revealed their escape plan to this man? He immediately dismisses it, wondering if such a move would only provoke an attack. A heavy silence fills the cell as the two groups stare each other down, the tension palpable. A chilling memory surfaces in Dante's mind. The image of 182 effortlessly breaking Tower's neck. He feels a surge of fear, worried that his companions might suffer the same fate. Across the room, 182 makes a slow, deliberate move, placing his hand inside his pocket. Dante is gripped by fear. Breaking the silence, 182 calmly asks if the coast is clear, and all Dante can do is stammer in response. Noticing his friend's terror, Rambutan calls out Dante's name, trying to break the spell. He then questions Dante, asking him why he appears to be so afraid. Rambutan tries to reassure him, dismissing their cellmate as just a fog zombie. He explains that once someone falls into limbo, they are left without strength until their next dose of the drug, expressing confidence that Dante would surely win. Dante feels a wave of relief, admitting he was just worried his two friends might get hurt. Hearing this, Rambutan suggests that if the man is a problem, he has a solution. Without warning, Rambutan raises his leg high, coiling his body for a powerful strike. He aims directly at 182's head and bluntly asks if he should just kill him now. 182 doesn't flinch, observing the threat with a silent, unnerving calm. Rambutan holds his attack pose, not moving an inch, creating a tense standoff. Just as the situation is about to explode, Dante yells for Rambutan to wait. Though clearly confused by the order, Rambutan listens to Dante and slowly lowers his leg, aborting the attack. Dante calmly states that there is no need to kill the man. He then announces to everyone present that he is leaving this place. Clarifying that he has no intention of living here, he suggests they all go their separate ways, asking if they understand his decision. As Dante signs, Ante too seems confused by the sudden turn of events, looking down and questioning the sweet potato he holds. Without warning, Dante snatches the sweet potato right out of 82's hands. He then moves to a water source and methodically fills a cup. Dante returns to 82, handing back the sweet potato, which is now resting in the glass filled with water. He explains that setting it up like this will allow the sweet potato to grow, adding that, of course, it will require sunlight. Dante then grabs 182 by his clothes, pulling him toward the exit. He tells the man he must show his precious friend the sunlight and should hurry before the sun sets. 182 admits that he doesn't know the way out, and Dante bluntly replies that he doesn't either. Turning his attention to his subordinate, Dante commands Rambutan to chase 182 away, adding that he will accompany them. Rambutan and Lychee are visibly surprised by the order, but Dante presses on, declaring that they will do it regardless of the risks, whether it's facing gunshots or being arrested for aiding an escape. In the next moment, the glass containing the sweet potato is thrown out onto the ground. Its contents spill across the grimy floor, wasted. 182 is then violently forced out, thrown to the floor after his possession. Lying on the ground, 182 looks on in silence. His gaze is fixed intently on the discarded sweet potato. As he stares at it, the faint echoes of a memory begin to stir within him. The memory takes shape, pulling him back to his childhood. He sees himself sitting with a young girl as she asks him if he knows what a puppy is, wondering if it's like a cat. She clarifies that they are animals, just like a crow. The girl describes them as small, cute creatures with fluffy fur, explaining that if a person raises one, it can understand words and will come running when called. As the young 82 listens silently, the girl confides that she wants to raise a puppy of her own. With tears in her eyes, she makes a promise that someday, when she finally gets outside, she will. The memory dissolves, and 182 returns to the present, his hand reaching for the sweet potato that sparked the recollection. Echoing the words from his past, he quietly urges it to come here. In another part of the prison, a group of inmates huddles together, measuring something on the ground. One of them calls out the distance, 20 centimeters. They murmur among themselves, confirming that it moved 20 centimeters, one asking in disbelief if it really moved at all. Their attention is fixed on a severed head, and a prisoner recognizes the man it once belonged to. A massive creature looms nearby, holding the man's headless body. The other prisoners conclude that he must have tried to escape. The grim reality of their situation hangs heavy in the oppressive prison air, the recent death a stark reminder of the stakes. Dante Kang, his voice low and urgent, questions their strategy, demanding to know how they plan to break out of this fortress. Rambutan doesn't offer a verbal explanation, instead promising to give Dante a demonstration. Dante watches, his expression shifting to one of sheer surprise at what he sees. A strange energy begins to emanate from Rambutan, his leg muscles bulging and flexing with an unnatural, contained power. With a sudden, explosive burst of force, Rambutan launches himself straight up, shattering the reinforced roof as he soars into the sky, leaving Dante shouting in alarm. Dante stares, completely shocked by the impossible sight and unable to comprehend what just happened. Lychee, in stark contrast, remains perfectly calm, her expression unchanged. She coolly explains to Dante that Rambutan possesses an incredible innate talent for jumping. Lychee then reveals their audacious plan. They intend to simply jump over the massive prison wall. With the objective clear, the three of them move together through the prison grounds, heading toward the outer gate. Upon reaching their chosen spot, Lychee brings a hand to her head and gives it a light tap. Her eyes begin to glow with an ethereal light, signaling the activation of her own unique talent. She then begins to draw, sketching out a perfect and detailed bird's-eye view of the entire facility on a small piece of paper. They lay the completed map on the floor, and Dante Kang can only look on, completely impressed by her work. He marvels at her talent for drawing something she has seen only once, as if from a photograph, and asks if she has managed to draw all of Fogland. Lychee explains that it's just a map she created while traveling from the center, clarifying that it represents only a fraction of what has been recorded. Dante is visibly stunned by this revelation. He stares at the vast, dark, unexplored areas on the paper, murmuring in disbelief that this is merely a fraction of the whole place. Lychee, however, is optimistic. Based on the size of Tofu Village, she believes they've traveled a long way and might be close to reaching the edge of Fogland. Dante's sharp eyes notice an omission on the map, pointing out something she didn't draw, which leaves Lychee looking confused. He then takes a marker and draws 4 stick figures on the map, indicating the 4 vagrants located there. Lychee snatches the marker from him, questioning what he's doing. Dante calmly states that he is marking potential threats. To make his point, he gestures toward a red figure already drawn on the map, asking what it represents. A heavy silence falls over the group as both Lychee and Rambutan avoid the question, a clear sign they are hiding something important. Rambutan breaks the tension, dismissing the concern by saying they'll be leaving soon anyway. He quickly asks Lychee which way they should go, and she points them in the right direction. Rambutan then slings his arm around Dante, calling him teacher and telling him it's time to go. Without another word, he grabs both of them and dashes forward, pulling them along. Meanwhile, in another, more crowded section of the prison, the oppressive atmosphere is thick with inmates. 182 approaches a group, quietly asking if they have any fog, the illicit blue drug that plagues the facility. The other prisoners simply turn to him with stern, unwelcoming glares. The silence that follows is heavy with unspoken threats and the grim reality of their confinement. One of the prisoners scoffs, wondering aloud, what is wrong with the idiot? 182. Undeterred, 182 calmly asks if they have any fog. One of the prisoners scoffs, questioning if he looks like he has any. 182's response is a cold command, empty their pockets. Enraged by the audacity, the prisoner explodes, cursing at 182 as he lands a solid punch. He follows up by kicking the fallen man, screaming about how he's starving to death and accusing 182 of being a lunatic with a death wish. Another inmate chimes in, his voice laced with a predatory hunger. He remarks that since he's hungry too, this situation works out perfectly, and ominously suggests they should just eat this person. He brandishes a spoon, bringing it menacingly close to 182's eye. The prisoner whispers a dark rumor that one can get fog from human flesh, mentioning how the infamous Bone Eaters does exactly that. Some of the other prisoners hesitate, questioning the idea of eating someone and suggesting they just hold out a little longer for lunch. But the aggressive one shouts them down, calling them cowards and insisting they have to get fog no matter the cost. The prisoner looms over 182, sadistically contemplating where they should begin. He morbidly wonders if they should take off his head and drink his blood, but quickly dismisses the thought for another, more gruesome idea. Just as he decides to gouge out 182's eyeballs, a devastating slap cracks across his face, delivered by an unseen figure. The prisoner is sent flying from the sheer force of the blow. As he hits the ground, the attacker is revealed to be the formidable figure known as Hound. A wave of shock and fear ripples through the other inmates as they recognize who has just intervened. The prisoners murmur in disbelief and alarm, unable to comprehend the sudden turn of events. The man who was struck clutches his head, crying out in agony as he realizes his eardrum has been burst by the single brutal slap. The remaining onlookers are frozen in a state of stunned awe at the display of overwhelming power. Hound now stands directly in front of the helpless 182, his presence silencing the entire room as the other prisoners whisper his name in terror. Panic finally breaks the stunned silence. The prisoners scramble to escape, their terrified shouts echoing Hound's name as they flee the scene. Amid the chaos, Hound ignores the fleeing prisoners and leans in close to the still figure of 82. He whispers that he's finally found him, but 192 remains unresponsive, lost in the throes of withdrawal. A flicker of recognition crosses Hound's face as he mutters the name Baghead, and his mind flashes back to their first encounter. The memory takes him back to the shootout, a scene of pure mayhem. In the flashback, Hound shatters the reinforced glass of a window with brutal force. He vaults through the opening, entering the teacher's room, his target in sight. There, lying unconscious on the floor, was Dante Kang. Without a moment's hesitation, Hound grabbed the fainted man, securing his prize. As he made his escape, a wave of triumph washed over him, a certainty that he had won. Fleeing back to his hideout, he sneered internally at the fools fighting amongst themselves, completely oblivious. They were so consumed by their battle, he thought, that they didn't even realize the teacher was gone. But his victory was tainted with rage as he thought of Tower, that bastard who had used one of his own crew members as a human shield. Tears of fury and betrayal streamed down his face as he scoffed at the very idea that they ever had a true alliance. In that moment of grief, a sudden sound jolted him back to reality. Someone was behind him. He turned to see 102 in pursuit, realizing with a start that one of them had followed him from the chaos. Hound abruptly stops his retreat, turning to face his pursuer. He demands to know which crew the bastard belongs to. Judging by 82's appearance, Hound questions if he's with Eater's crew, or perhaps with Drillhead. Just as Hound was trying to figure out this newcomer's allegiance, his eyes fell upon the sweet potato clutched in 82's hand. Breaking the tense silence, 182 asked a bizarre question, wondering if they were sweet potatoes animals as well. The strange inquiry left Hound completely bewildered, unable to comprehend what 182 was even talking about. Sensing Hound's confusion, 182 seemed genuinely surprised that he didn't know, calmly suggesting that perhaps he should ask the teacher. Hound's patience wore thin. Already in a foul mood, he internally dismissed the conversation as some kind of crazy nonsense. He mentally cursed 82 as a moron, but 82 simply repeated his cryptic suggestion, asking again if he should wake the teacher. Pushed to his limit, Hound had enough. He threw Dante from his back and lunged forward, charging straight at 82. He closed the distance in an instant, his fist clenched tight as his mind seethed with annoyance at the whole situation. Without hesitation, Hound launched a powerful punch, determined to end the strange encounter. But in that critical moment, 82 leaned back with extreme agility, dodging the attack completely. Hound was stunned, his mind reeling in disbelief at the impossible evasion. As he dodged, 82 locked his gaze onto Hound, his expression sharp and focused. Hound's missed attack had left him wide open, and 82 immediately targeted the exposed area. He pointed his fingers, shaping his hand like a spear for a deadly counter. While still in that awkward bent-back position, 82 struck with incredible precision, his fingers piercing into Hound's side, leaving Hound shocked by the sudden counterattack. A moment later, a sharp, searing pain surged through Hound's entire body from the fresh wound. Writhing on the cold floor, Hound struggled against the overwhelming agony that pulsed from his new wound, his body convulsing with the shock of the attack. Back in the present, Hound tore of the mask from 182, accusing him to be a damned thief. Staring at the now exposed face of his attacker, Hound's voice dripped with bitter sarcasm as he asked if the teacher was doing well, the question hanging in the tense air like a threat. Hound pulled the mask away, finally revealing the face of the man who had ambushed him. A short, sharp laugh escaped his lips as he got a clear look at his captive. Hound couldn't believe it, utterly disgusted that he'd been searching for such a pathetic-looking individual all this time. Despite his desperate situation, 82 brazenly asked if he had any of the illicit drug known as fog, prompting a sudden realization in Hound, who wondered if this was all connected to Limbo. Later, back in the crew's hideout, the captive was secured. A photograph of D-Dot, Hound's former second-in-command, served as a grim reminder of what they had lost. The interrogation began with a cold, methodical count from one of the crew members, his voice echoing as he counted up to 2. The count continued to 3, each number punctuated by the sickening crack of one of 82's fingers being broken. Even after being beaten to a pulp, 182 remained silent, forcing one of his torturers to mutter in astonishment that the man was completely crazy. A voice taunted 82, asking if he planned to use his toes as a spoon now. Another crew member cut through the mockery, screaming the real question they all wanted answered, the teacher's location. Despite the agony, 182 made a counteroffer. If they gave him the fog, he would tell them everything. One of the crew members scoffed in disbelief at his audacity. Unimpressed, one of his tormentors threatened to see how long he could last, ordering another to break one more bone. The other man pointed out they had already broken all 5 of his fingers and suggested they break a toe instead. As the brutal torture continued, they screamed at him to give them the information before they crippled him so badly he'd be forced to walk on his butt. A man named Slick, watching from the side, questioned if 82 could even feel pain anymore. He told Hound the prolonged interrogation was a waste of time, and suggested they just give him 1 dose of fog. Hound immediately shut down the idea, forbidding anyone from giving 182 any fog. Puzzled, Slick asked Hound what he was so afraid of. While one of the crew members eagerly volunteered to break 82's toes, Slick continued to mock Hound's caution, asking how he could possibly be scared of such a skinny runt. Hound challenged Slick's assessment, asking him if he truly saw 82 as nothing more than a scrawny kid. Pointing at 82's physique, Hound directed Slick's attention to the sheer depth of the muscle. He explained that 82's body was trained to an extreme, with his body fat likely under 5%. Another crew member in the background remarked that 82's body was perfectly cut. Slick dismissed the observation, arguing that having no fat only makes taking hits even worse. Hound countered that despite the logic, 1T2 didn't seem to feel any pain at all. Just then, a crew member urgently called out Hound's name. Slick changed the subject, warning that other shoulders were beginning to move now that news of the teacher's location in Dubu village was out. He criticized Hound for thoughtlessly breaking their alliance, stressing that they would lose their chance if another shoulder got to the teacher first. Slick drove his point home, stating that no matter how he thought about it, killing Tower had been a mistake. Hound's response was cold and unwavering. To those who harmed their brothers, the only answer was blood revenge. He told Slick not to act like a worthless coward. Slick retorted that if Hound thought about it more deeply, he'd understand that they needed to gather fog. Slick insisted that even their fallen comrade, Dedat, would have wanted them to prioritize getting the fog. In a flash of anger, Hound slammed his fist down on the table. Slick immediately flinched back in fear, his defiant posture crumbling. As he grabbed a beer, Hound's anger subsided into a grim resolve. He agreed that of course they would not let Didat's death be in vain. He made a solemn vow that, for Didat's sake, they would all ascend together. Raising his can, he proposed a toast to Didat and took a long drink. The rest of his crew joined in, their voices echoing in a collective cheer for their fallen friend. But the moment of remembrance was shattered as Hound suddenly choked, spitting out his beer. The spray misted over the photo of their past crew member, desecrating the small memorial. His crew members cried out in alarm, asking what was wrong and pointing out that he had soiled Didat's portrait. Clutching his side in pain, Hound dismissed their worried questions, telling them not to make a fuss and insisting he was just choking. But in his mind, a memory surfaced, a brief, violent moment where an opponent had precisely aimed and stabbed him between the ribs. He was certain that ever since that attack, his liver function had worsened, connecting the old wound to his current agony. His eyes found their target, and with a sudden burst of anger, he hurled the empty beer can straight at 82. Staring 82 down, Hound declared that while the others might be blind to it, he could not be fooled. He leaned in close, his voice low, accusing 82's previous victory of being a result of technique, not luck. Such skill was a rarity in Fogland, where everyone else relied solely on the power from fog to fight. Hound identified the style as Krav Maga, a practical combat system developed by the Israeli military known for its focus on rapid neutralization through strikes to vital points. He locked eyes with 82, demanding to know if his assessment was correct. His gaze then shifted downward, focusing intently on the shoes 102 was wearing, connecting the clues, the fighting style and the footwear. Hound posed a direct and dangerous question. He asked if 82 was a soldier. Just as the tension reached its peak, the scene cuts away, leaving the confrontation unresolved. We find ourselves with Dante and his group, who have arrived before a massive, imposing gate. Dante stares at the massive gate, a glimmer of hope piercing the oppressive gloom. He declares with certainty that this is their exit. The reality of it sinks in, and a wave of pure elation washes over him. It's really the way out of this hell. But before he can get carried away, Rambutan yanks him back, pulling him from the clear line of sight of a looming watchtower. They press themselves into a corner, hidden in the shadows. Rambutan urges him to wait a moment just as Lychee points out the source of their new problem. Lychee confirms the danger. A watchtower stands sentinel over the gate. Dante's gaze follows, his brief hope turning to cold dread as he finally sees it. Dante whispers, asking if they think anyone is inside. Lychee can only admit that she doesn't know, her uncertainty adding to the tension. Peeking from their hiding spot, Dante offers to go alone, a suggestion Rambutan immediately shuts down, calling it a crazy idea. Lychee questions what he would even do by himself, sarcastically asking if his plan is to simply knock on the door. She knows even getting close would be suicide. Suddenly, a disembodied voice from below them confirms their fears, stating that anyone who gets close to that door will be shot on sight. Lychee quietly accepts the grim warning. Both Rambutan and Lychee are startled by the unexpected voice, their expressions a mixture of confusion and alarm. Dante is equally shocked, whirling around to find the source of the voice that seemed to come from nowhere. His surprise turns to horror when he sees a man's head peeking out from a dark hole in the ground right at their feet, and he cries out in shock. Stammering, Dante struggles to comprehend what he's seeing, blurting out the first thing that comes to his mind and calling the strange man a sweet potato. The man in the hole glares up, clearly annoyed, and tells Dante not to call him that. As Dante retorts, a flicker of recognition crosses his face. He's seen this man before. With a jolt, he realizes this is the same mysterious prisoner who was in the class with him. Sensing a different kind of danger, Rambutan steps protectively in front of Dante, ordering him to get back. He knows exactly who this person is. With a grim tone, Rambutan reveals the man's status within the prison's hierarchy. He is a shoulders. The title means nothing to Dante, who can only repeat the word in confusion, the ominous term hanging heavy in the tense air. Before Dante can process the meaning of shoulders, his attention is violently drawn to a new threat. A swarm of inmates, their heads strangely obscured by traffic cones, rushes toward them, and he can't help but wonder if their leader is another one of these so-called shoulders. Dante watches, his eyes narrowed, as the bizarre group approaches with unnerving purpose. In a synchronized, almost ritualistic movement, the prisoners arriving from one side quickly place their cones on the ground. Immediately after, another group of inmates from the opposite direction mirrors the strange action, adding to the growing sense of dread. Within moments, the prisoners have formed a tight circle around Dante and his companions, trapping them completely. A figure then leaps from the crowd, stepping into the center of the circle and introducing himself with a single menacing name, Drillhead. Proclaiming himself to be the man closest to becoming the supreme leader, Drillhead wastes no time and lunges directly at Dante. As he closes the distance, Drillhead addresses Dante with a surprising title, calling him Teachers. Dante is frozen in shock as Drillhead reaches for him, demanding that he come along. But just as Drillhead is about to seize him, Rambutan reacts with lightning speed. With brutal efficiency, Rambutan slams his leg into Drillhead's skull, stopping the attack cold. Standing over the downed attacker, Rambutan makes it clear that the teacher is coming with them, and no one else. Drillhead's men are still reeling from the impact of their leader being kicked into them like a rag doll. As he recovers, Drillhead stares at his opponent, bewildered by his strength and demanding to know what he is. Rambutan coldly warns him not to interfere, stating plainly that he found this person first. Drillhead scoffs, insulting Rambutan as some stray mutt who doesn't even have the sense to be afraid. Then, in a completely bizarre turn, Drillhead rises onto the tips of his toes, poised like a ballerina in a pointed shoe. He begins to spin on the spot, his movements shockingly fluid and controlled. The rotation accelerates, turning him into a blur, as if he were performing some kind of grim prison yard ballet. With a final, powerful push, Drillhead launches himself into the air. Dante can only stare, completely stunned and questioning if he's actually seeing ballet. He then dives headfirst toward the ground, his entire body spinning like a massive drill, boring directly into the earth and disappearing from sight. Dante is left speechless, but Rambutan breaks the silence with a panicked shout, warning that their opponent is now tunneling toward them from underground. Just as Rambutan warned, the ground beneath them begins to crack and splinter, tracing the unseen path of Drillhead as he tears through the earth. In a burst of dirt and debris, Drillhead erupts from the ground directly behind an unsuspecting Dante, poised for a surprise attack. Dante spins around just in time to see his opponent, who lets out a low, menacing chuckle at having closed the distance so easily. But before Drillhead can act, Rambutan reacts with incredible speed, bringing his foot down with enough force to shatter the ground where the attacker just stood. The fight turns into a deadly game as Drillhead begins popping out of multiple holes, taunting them for being too slow. Rambutan relentlessly stomps at each new hole with his powerful leg, but Drillhead is too quick, effortlessly dodging every strike. While Rambutan keeps their opponent occupied, Dante drops into a low crouch, eyes scanning the chaotic scene as he formulates a plan. Pinning down Drillhead seems impossible, as he continues to move with blinding speed, a blur of motion between the newly formed tunnels. Suddenly, Drillhead exploits a gap, bursting from the ground directly beneath Rambutan. He drives his pointed head upwards in a savage attack, piercing Rambutan from behind. The force of the blow sends Rambutan flying, while Drillhead spins in mid-air to recover his balance. A desperate cry cuts through the air as Lychee screams out for Rambutan. The surrounding prisoners pause, startled by the unfamiliar sound, questioning if they just heard a woman's voice. Realizing her mistake, Lychee quickly covers her mouth, but it's too late. The whispers confirm the shocking truth: a woman is among them. The revelation even makes Drillhead pause, his attention shifting as he turns to face Lychee. In an instant, one of the crew members lunges forward and tears open her jumpsuit, shouting in disbelief that she is a real woman. The other prisoners immediately swarm Lychee, restraining her as she struggles and cries for them to let her go. Amidst the chaos, they excitedly discuss taking her with them. Frozen in place, Dante can only whisper her name in horror. A crushing weight of guilt settles over Dante as he realizes that this is all happening because of him. The oppressive air crackles with tension as the grim reality of the situation sinks in. Breaking from his stupor, Dante weakly stammers for them to stop. When his plea goes ignored, a desperate resolve takes over, and he grabs a heavy rock from the dusty ground. With a surge of adrenaline, he hurls the rock directly at the men holding Lychee, screaming for them to stop it. The sudden, violent act stuns everyone. Lychee looks on in wide-eyed shock, completely taken aback by Dante's desperate intervention. Dante stands panting, his body trembling with fear from his own actions, as Lychee calls out his name in alarm. Consumed by panic, he continues to throw more rocks, launching a wild barrage with every ounce of his strength. His aim is erratic, however, and some of the thrown rocks accidentally strike Lychee. The other prisoners can only stare, wondering what has gotten into him. Seeing him completely losing control, Laiki quickly grabs his hand, calling his name and telling him that it is enough. Her desperate plea for him to wake up finally cuts through the haze. Dante snaps back to reality, his immediate concern turning to her as he asks if she's alright. With no time to waste, Lychee urges him to run, pulling him away from the crowd of prisoners who are left stunned by their sudden escape. Watching them flee, Drillhead's gaze lingers on Lychee, and he remarks to himself how pretty she is. At that very moment, Rambutan begins to regain his senses, the fog of the drug finally starting to lift. Drillhead immediately notices the shift, a look of grim realization dawning on his face as he assesses the situation. Without a second of hesitation, Rambutan unleashes his power, launching himself directly toward Dante and Lychee. Drillhead is right behind him, both men now a blur as they rush to intercept the escaping duo. Their hope for escape is violently crushed. Rambutan seizes Lychee while Drillhead captures Dante, each man getting exactly what he was after. Without a moment's hesitation, Drillhead dives, pulling Dante along as he bores directly into the hard-packed earth. Left behind, Rambutan can only scream Dante's name in helpless shock as he disappears from view. Drillhead's body spins with incredible speed, tunneling deep underground while Dante's terrified cries are swallowed by the darkness. Elsewhere, inside Hound's grim hideout, a tense interrogation unfolds. Hound eyes his captive and asks him plainly if he's a soldier. He presses the injured 182 for information, wondering aloud if he might be from the Special Forces or a similar unit. Hound then reveals a piece of his own past, explaining that he also used to be the kind of man who fought in real fights. That was all before he ended up in the oppressive confines of Fogland, a place far removed from his former life. Suddenly, the interrogation takes a sharp turn as Hound gives a curt order to his subordinate, Slick, to take the man down, leaving Slick momentarily stunned by the command. As he leaves, Hound gives Slick one last cold command, to use every dirty trick in the book on the prisoner, but to make sure he doesn't give him any of the illicit drug known as fog. The door slams shut, leaving Slick alone in the tense silence. He can only mutter Hound's name, a mix of disbelief and frustration coloring his tone. Left to handle the situation, Slick's annoyance boils over as he curses under his breath, clearly infuriated by the position Hound has put him in. One of the other crew members, a large man, asks Slick what his plan is, even offering to take over the interrogation. Slick immediately snaps back, berating the man for being an idiot. Turning to the rest of the stunned crew, Slick openly voices his dissent, calling Hound an irresponsible bastard who has none of the qualities required to be a leader. He continues his mutinous speech, questioning if Hound is truly the one destined to become the supreme leader. Slick suggests that with enough fog, anyone has a chance to seize power. Slick then begins to sow seeds of ambition among the others. He turns to a man named Inko, noting his skill at drawing and telling him that in its own way, that talent gives him the qualities to be a supreme leader. Next, he addresses a man named Bulk, pointing out his skill in using his weight. Slick's message is clear, every single one of them has potential, leaving Bulk momentarily speechless. Intrigued, Bulk turns the question back on Slick, asking what qualities he possesses. Slick pauses, ready to present his own case for leadership. Slick confidently explains that he's felt his own intelligence rising lately. He claims that every morning when he opens his eyes, he realizes with a little more clarity just how stupid Hound truly is. Slick declares that trying to rise through the ranks with brute strength is an outdated concept. He confidently states that this is now the age of the brain, and in this world, intellect is the only true power. Bulk, one of Hound's crew, cautiously asks what Slick's next move is. Slick calmly reveals his plan to discover the teacher's location. However, he adds a crucial twist. He has no intention of sharing this valuable information with Hound. Slick leaves the rest of the decision up to them, prompting a shocked reaction from Inko. He then crouches down, leaning toward the injured 82, and tells the crew they must choose who they will follow from now on. Addressing 182 directly as Kid, Slick asks him if he desires it that desperately. He then reveals a glowing lump of the illicit blue fog held in the palm of his hand. With a tempting offer, Slick tells 182 that he will give the fog to him. Meanwhile, in the grimy depths of the prison, Dante and Drillhead emerge from the darkness of a sewer pipe. A chilling smirk spreads across Drillhead's face as he takes in their new surroundings. Looking down at Dante, he offers a simple, ominous welcome. Drillhead declares that Dante has just arrived in his personal underground kingdom. Back with Slick and 182, the offer hangs heavy in the air. Slick dangles the glowing blue fog, laying out his terms. In return for the drug, 182 must come under his command, after which he can share information about the teacher. To increase the pressure, Slick places the fog on his own tongue, tauntingly reminding 82 that he won't leave without it. As 82 watches the glowing substance intently, Slick urges him to think his decision over carefully. But the time for consideration is cut short. With a final warning that he doesn't offer chances twice, Slick swallows the fog. The precious drug disappears down his throat, the opportunity lost, leaving 82 to face the consequences of his hesitation. Panic and desperation take over. 182 leaps onto Slick, a raw, primal instinct driving him. He's trying to get the fog back, even if it means tearing it out of the man's throat. With a savage fury, he bites and claws at Slick, who can only manage a choked sound of shock and pain, completely caught off guard by the sudden violence. In the grim confines of the prison, the Hound crew members watch in stunned silence as their comrade Slick is brutally assaulted. The sheer violence of the act leaves the onlookers utterly shaken, frozen in place by the horror unfolding before them. Slick collapses to the ground, blood pouring from his torn-apart throat as a crew member cries out his name in disbelief. Chaos erupts as Bulk struggles to understand what just happened. Another man screams that Slick's throat has been slit, while Inko can only shout his fallen friend's name. Inko remains completely shocked, unable to process the sudden and vicious attack that has just occurred. 182 seems to come to his senses. He calmly grabs his own broken fingers and forces them back into place. Watching this disturbingly rapid recovery, Inko breaks into a cold sweat, his fear palpable. 182 then slowly rises to his feet, his presence filling the space with a palpable sense of dread. His eyes begin to glow with an unnatural blue light as veins bulge across his skin, twisting his features into a monstrous visage. Elsewhere, Dante Kang is lost in thought, wondering if Rambutan and Likey managed to escape. He resigns himself to the likelihood that they succeeded and have already left him behind. Inside Drillhead's hideout, Dante Kang accepts that his former companions had no reason to wait for him, leaving him completely alone. As Drillhead confronts him, a sense of finality washes over Dante. He feels utterly finished. Drillhead sits before him and cuts straight to the chase, demanding to know if the teacher can really make the illicit drug known as fog. Dante sits in tense silence. He continues, relaying a story he heard from the Tofu Village inmates, that Dante instantly whipped up fog, which he then consumed before breaking Tower's neck. Dante is completely baffled, wondering how such a wild and dangerous rumor could have possibly begun. Drillhead presses him, asking if the story is true. Internally, Dante dismisses it as an impossibility. Suddenly, Dante recalls Tower's furious reaction, the memory of being called utterly useless echoing in his mind. The memory of what happened after he told Tower the truth terrifies him into silence as he realizes the dire consequences of honesty. Faced with an impossible choice, Dante looks at a stunned Drillhead and confirms the lie. Yes, it's true. Dante doubles down on the falsehood, wildly claiming he made a huge amount of fog, swallowed it, and caused Tower to collapse onto his thigh like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Drillhead immediately erupts, calling it bullshit and demanding that Dante stop lying to him. He declares that he isn't as foolish as the other shoulders, and doesn't believe in the ridiculous superstition that a science teacher could create fog. Dante offers a counterpoint, reasoning that if no one knows how to make it, then fog shouldn't exist at all. Drillhead simply shuts him down with a firm no. Drillhead then reveals a startling belief held within the prison: fog was never made by anyone. He explains that one day, the substance just suddenly appeared, as if it had fallen from the sky. He finishes his explanation, describing its mysterious arrival as a divine gift from a god. The story sparks a memory in Dante Kang, a detail from 50 years ago when a massive meteorite struck the middle of the desert. A chilling possibility begins to form in his mind. He connects the two events, wondering if that very meteorite could be the source of the fog. Drillhead adds to the grim tale, explaining that after 50 years, rumors claim the fog is nearly gone and that a day of reckoning is fast approaching. The truth of the situation settles in: the precious substance is a finite resource. He elaborates that because of this scarcity, the prisoners are locked in a desperate struggle over the little fog that remains. Even so, the substance continues to circulate within the prison walls. He then abruptly orders his men to bring him something. In response to his command, a body is unceremoniously thrown down in front of them. Dante cries out in horror, unable to comprehend the scene. Drillhead explains with cold detachment that the man died from taking fog. He then poses a disturbing question, wondering if it's possible to extract the fog from the dead man's blood. Utterly bewildered by the grotesque suggestion, Dante can only stare. Drillhead pushes, asking if such a thing is scientifically feasible. The gang leader muses about using some kind of three-dimensional maneuver device, and Dante, horrified, supplies the correct term: a centrifuge. Dante's face darkens as he confirms the theory. It would be possible to separate the fog component from the blood. Drillhead realizes that heavy users would have the substance infused deep within their bodies. Leaning closer with a predatory gleam, Drillhead asks if this means they should just squeeze the corpse, mockingly questioning if that would be scientifically sound. Dante calmly retorts that if it's simply a matter of fog concentration, it would be more effective to just open one's nostrils and breathe it in, pointing out that ordinary mist is everywhere. Enraged, Drillhead grabs Dante by the neck, demanding to know if he's joking. He throttles him, shouting that if it were that simple, no one would be so desperately searching for the valuable drug. Drillhead continues to scream that you cannot simply gather air, the fog must be painstakingly scraped together and compressed. As he struggles for breath, Drillhead's words spark a sudden realization in Dante's mind. The concept of gathering air into a single mass triggers an idea. His mind flashes to an image of the Fogland at night, the air thick and heavy in the darkness. He then recalls the same landscape during the day, considering the atmospheric changes. The thought process continues as an image of falling rain appears in his mind. He begins to connect this to the scientific principle of precipitation. Finally, all the pieces click into place as he links the natural processes of condensation and precipitation. With newfound certainty, Dante declares that it can be done, causing Drillhead's eyes to widen in shock. Dante confidently explains his breakthrough. Air, just like water vapor, can be gathered. Meanwhile, in another part of the Grim facility, a different scene unfolds. Hound enters his crew's hideout, cheerfully announcing that it's time for breakfast. His jovial mood instantly vanishes, replaced by stunned silence as he takes in the sight before him. The hideout is eerily quiet, the floor littered with the lifeless bodies of his entire crew. Staring at the carnage, Hound's eyes flare a deep, burning red, a mixture of shock, grief, and incandescent rage. The weight of the massacre crushes him, and he collapses to his knees, a raw, inhuman scream of pure anguish tearing through the silence. Elsewhere, in the sterile, tense atmosphere of the prison chow hall, the daily routine of survival continues. A lone figure, 182, stands apart from the crowd, his hands visibly injured and trembling. Pushing through the pain, he stumbles forward, ignoring the line and heading directly for the distribution counter. The woman serving food looks up, annoyed by the disruption, and questions what he thinks he's doing. Ignoring her, 182 rasps out a single, desperate word, asking for water. The server scoffs, telling him to stop making a fuss and get in line like everyone else. Other prisoners join in, mocking him as a newbie who doesn't understand the cafeteria's rigid rules and telling him to wait his turn. Having heard enough, 82 slowly raises his battered fist, a silent promise of violence. He slams it down onto the metal stand with a deafening crash, causing the nearby inmates to cry out in shock. The lunch distributor's face pales, her earlier annoyance instantly replaced by raw fear. With a menacing glare that silences the entire hall, 102 repeats his demand, his voice low and unwavering as he asks again for water. Following Dante's instructions to the letter, 82 carefully places a sweet potato into a makeshift cup of water, a desperate act of faith. He had even smashed a hole through the ceiling, a reckless move to allow a sliver of sunlight to reach the plant. Now, all he can do is wait in silence. Meanwhile, in another part of the prison, Dante is engaged in a much different kind of cultivation. He meticulously begins condensing the glowing, illicit fog. With intense focus, he works to transform the volatile substance, refining it into a potent liquid form. The process is slow and deliberate as single droplets of the newly formed liquid begin to fall. As the last of the liquid is gathered, Dante whispers to himself that the work is finally complete. A wave of excitement washes over him as he marvels at his creation, triumphantly dubbing it fog water. A sinister smirk spreads across Dante's face. He believes he's a genius, that this creation has saved him and made him completely untouchable within these prison walls. But back in his cell, 182's hope crumbles. He stares at the lifeless potato, realizing it will never grow. A heavy sense of betrayal washes over him as he concludes he's been fooled, his thoughts turning to the one he called teacher. The sense of betrayal hardens into a cold, lethal resolve. His thoughts are consumed by a single, dark promise: he will kill the teacher who deceived him. Meanwhile, Rambutan and Lychee approach another prisoner with a dangerous proposition. The inmate is skeptical, asking if they are seriously suggesting they break out together. Rambutan confirms it, declaring that they will all escape the prison as one. The prisoner still hesitates, the idea of escape seeming like a fantasy. Rambutan presses him, insisting that there truly is a way to get out of this place. But instead of being swayed, the prisoner's demeanor changes as he reaches into his pocket, his expression hardening. He pulls out a dagger, his face twisting into a menacing snarl. He warns them to stop spouting nonsense and get lost. Faced with the sudden threat, Rambutan quickly agrees. Taking the hint, Rambutan and Lychee turn and walk away, leaving the hostile inmate behind. As they retreat, Lychee reflects on the harsh reality of their environment. She notes that no matter how naive or dumb someone may appear, there is no one in this prison who doesn't know about that thing. Rambutan realizes with the start that there might be one exception to that rule. He thinks to himself that Dante is likely the only person inside these walls who remains ignorant of that thing. Changing the subject to their next move, Lychee points to a map indicating their new target, Drillhead's hideout. Elsewhere, Dante's mind is on a completely different kind of fog. He's contemplating the mechanics of a fog catcher, a device capable of producing water from the air in dry regions. He muses on the simple scientific principle behind it, how water vapor in the atmosphere condenses when the temperature drops to the dew point. Dante continues his explanation, detailing how at dawn, as the temperature plummets, a simple mesh net can be used to capture the moisture from the common fog, converting it directly into water. He reveals the genius of his plan lies in its simplicity. An ordinary breathable insect screen is all that's needed for the collection net. By shaping the bottom of the screen into a curve, all the collected dew is ingeniously funneled into a single collection point, maximizing their harvest. He knew this water wouldn't be ordinary, it would be saturated with the valuable illicit fog. Thanks to the oppressive humidity of the prison, they had managed to produce even more than he had hoped for. Drillhead stares at the collected liquid, his voice filled with disbelief. He can't comprehend what he's seeing, questioning if it's really fog water. As Drillhead cautiously dips a finger into the container, Dante calmly explains that it is indeed water made from the pure fog of Fogland, though he admits he can't guarantee its concentration. Unable to resist, Drillhead lifts his finger to his mouth, tasting the mysterious liquid for himself. A wave of shock washes over him. There's no mistaking that familiar, potent taste. He realizes with a jolt that it's genuine fog, the real thing distilled into a pure liquid form. Drillhead erupts in a manic celebration, screaming to his followers that it's real. He declares that they've just secured an infinite supply of fog, dancing wildly in the grimy prison yard. His followers are swept up in the euphoria, their voices rising in a feverish chorus as they chant his title, Teacher. The celebration intensifies, the air thick with their desperate, reverent shouts for their teacher, their newfound hope. Sometime later, the echoes of their frantic joy finally fade into the oppressive silence of the prison. In the quiet that follows, Dante stands transformed, now clad in a sharp, tailored suit. Drillhead approaches, remarking on how well the new attire fits him. He calls Dante teacher, noting that he looks different, as if he were naturally a suit wearer, and asks if he is pleased with the refit. Dante acknowledges that it's made nicely, like a proper dress shirt. Drillhead assures him that from now on, no one will lay a hand on him, explaining that such finely tailored clothes are not for just anyone. He then formally welcomes Dante as one of them, promising that he will be treated with the highest level of respect. As Dante takes this in, his mind begins to work. He recalls that Drillhead, also known as Illicom, is the man closest to the supreme leader. The words of 82 echo in his memory. To escape this hell, one must become the supreme leader. A path begins to clear in his thoughts. Perhaps through Drillhead he can finally make contact with the prison administration. His strategic planning is cut short when Drillhead announces a grand fog festival for that day, crediting Dante for making it possible since they no longer need to conserve their supply. Drillhead declares that they are going to use every last bit of the glowing blue fog they have gathered. The entire ritual, he explains, is for his own personal ascension. The word ascension hangs in the air, leaving Dante to silently question its ominous meaning. As if summoned, Drillhead's followers carry in a giant plate, piled high with a massive amount of the illicit fog. A strange ceremony commences as the followers begin to dance in a circle around the offering. The oppressive atmosphere is suddenly broken by the blare of honking horns, signaling the start of a feverish celebration. The celebration erupts with a thunderous rhythmic pounding of drums, adding to the raw, chaotic energy. Drillhead stands before a massive pile of the glowing blue fog, the illicit substance at the heart of the ceremony, and declares that they have finally gathered enough. Watching from the sidelines, Dante Kang is stunned by the sheer quantity, questioning if the entire mountain is truly fog. He can only wonder if they're about to initiate some kind of mass, drug-fueled ritual. Drillhead addresses his followers, his voice booming. He proclaims himself the king of the underground and announces that this is the moment their long efforts will finally bear fruit. He reveals his grand ambition, to use the fog they have painstakingly saved to challenge what he calls ascension on this very day. He roars at the crowd, demanding to know if they believe in his ascension, and they roar back with their unwavering faith. His followers begin a rhythmic chant, their voices echoing the single, powerful command for him to ascend. The feverish chant of ascends grows louder, filling the oppressive air with a manic devotion. He begins to declare that they are about to witness the true birth of a king. As he speaks, he gathers a handful of the glowing blue fog, preparing for the ritual. Without hesitation, Drillhead begins to shove the fog lumps into his mouth, devouring the entire stash himself. His followers watch in awe, a collective gasp rippling through the crowd. Dante Kang, however, is completely floored. He can't believe what he's seeing, wondering why Drillhead is consuming it all by himself. The followers, lost in their frenzy, ignore the implications and continue their desperate chant for his ascension. As the chant reaches its peak, Drillhead suddenly yells out, telling them it is not yet time. His followers anxiously ask if there is any change, their chanting unwavering. But Drillhead, visibly struggling, insists once more that the transformation has not yet begun. His followers lean in, their hope and anxiety palpable as they ask again if there is any change at all. As Drillhead continues to shovel the glowing blue substance into his mouth, his very facial structure begins to contort and morph under the strain. He relentlessly consumes the fog, leaving the massive plate almost completely bare. Suddenly, he stops. His stomach is grotesquely swollen, stretched tight like a balloon. Seeing his distress, his followers anxiously ask if he is all right. As his belly continues to expand, Drillhead curses in frustration, convinced that today is another failure. He thinks of all the fog he has consumed throughout his life, all for nothing. His followers try to comfort him, suggesting his vessel of talent is simply so immense it requires more. They reason that since the fog is now limitless, he can always try again. Resigned, Drillhead agrees that there's nothing more to be done. But just as despair sets in, one of the followers gasps, pointing out that Drillhead's head appears to have grown longer than it was before. The others agree, confirming that it is definitely longer. A strange blue energy starts to radiate from Drillhead as his body begins a visible, dramatic transformation. A wave of realization washes over the followers. They understand this is the moment they've been waiting for, and their whispers build into a fanatical chant of ascension. As Drillhead's face becomes completely saturated in a deep blue hue, his followers press him, asking what it feels like and if he can sense a new talent. He can only let out a low groan, overwhelmed by the experience. Cracks begin to spiderweb across his altered face. Through the breaking visage, he speaks with newfound awe, proclaiming that he can feel the universe itself. He feels as though he has been transported to the very heart of the cosmos, to the source from which the fog originates. While his followers watch, completely captivated, Drillhead declares that he can now see all the truths of their world. His body begins to bubble and disfigure, losing its human shape. As he dissolves into this new form, he reveals the final, terrible truth he has witnessed, that all of them are living within a pale, blue hell. Drillhead's followers could only stare in utter disbelief, their minds recoiling from the grotesque sight before them. Even Dante was paralyzed by the horror watching the final moments of this monstrous transformation. Suddenly, the bubbling form reaches its limit, and Drillhead's body violently explodes, atomizing into countless glowing fragments. With his final coherent thought, Drillhead realizes that this is a fall, not a transcendence. As his remains rain down, his followers surge forward, drawn to the site of his destruction. Dante watches the chaotic scene, quietly contemplating whether he just witnessed a divine ascension or a catastrophic fall from grace. But his shock turns to confusion as the followers begin to celebrate. They cheer that their boss has finally fallen, their voices filled with a disturbing glee as they scream out for the fog. Dante is frozen to his core, utterly taken aback. He finally understands their excitement. Drillhead's death has yielded an enormous, incredible amount of the precious blue fog, and for them, this is a cause for celebration. Dante watches as what he calls a rain of fog pours down from the fallen leader. Drillhead's followers, ecstatic, begin to gather every last glowing particle, celebrating their grotesque windfall. The scene descends into a horrifying feeding frenzy as the prisoners start to consume the very remains of their former boss. They devour everything they can, including Drillhead's actual corpse. Dante realizes with disgust that this is what they consider a true, grand fog festival. He can only stand there, stunned, as the followers' delirious chants of "festival" echo through the chamber, their joy a stark contrast to the gruesome reality. But their gluttony has immediate, horrific consequences. Those who consume the fog too excessively begin to burst apart, their bodies unable to contain the overload in a chaotic, explosive frenzy. Amid the gruesome chaos, a lone voice of reason cries out. One of the prisoners desperately pleads with the others to stop, screaming that consuming so much of the fog at once will inevitably kill them all. Another prisoner turns to Dante, addressing him as teacher. He begs Dante to intervene and stop the madness, insisting that he is the only one who could become their leader and guide them through this. Dante is completely bewildered by the sudden appeal for him to be their leader. As the others begin to chant for him to take over the Drillhead's position, he recoils, stating firmly that he wants no part of it. As the prisoners' desperate calls for their teacher grow louder, Dante turns his back on them, making a swift decision. Rejecting the burden of leadership, Dante breaks into a run, shouting that he doesn't want the responsibility. Unwilling to let him go, the other crew members give chase, yelling for someone to grab their teacher. While fleeing, Dante's mind struggles to process the horror unfolding. He questions what is happening, desperately trying to convince himself that this must all be a terrible dream. He tells himself that something this insane couldn't possibly happen in reality. His thoughts become a frantic plea, begging himself to wake up from the nightmare he seems trapped in. But as Dante continues to run, the fabric of his reality begins to fray, his perception of the world around him twisting and distorting. Dashing through a dark tunnel, an illusion materializes before him, the figure of his brother. The apparition's voice echoes, hauntingly repeating that he had warned him about this. The image of his older brother looks at him with an air of sad certainty, simply stating that he had told him so. Shocked, Dante calls out to the phantom of his brother. He begs the vision for help, pleading with it to pull him out of this hellish situation. The illusion offers no solace. Instead, it coldly asks if Dante still fails to understand, adding that what he looks like is completely irrelevant. The illusion of his brother continues its cruel assessment, calling what Dante sees a ridiculous mask. A strangled sound escapes Dante's lips, unable to form a proper response. The figure presses the point, repeating that it's not just a ridiculous mask, but a cowardly one. The accusation finally breaks him. Dante lets out a raw scream, crying and begging for the torment to stop. This is the source of his anguish, a condition known as selective prosopagnosia, which robs him of the ability to recognize faces. Dante admits the devastating truth to himself: he can't remember what his brother looked like. In place of a face, his mind can only conjure the image of a simple circle. A painful memory surfaces of his brother asking why Dante had drawn him that way, jokingly adding that he would never become an artist. Dante recalls how his brother's face was never stable in his memory. It would constantly change, morphing from an angry person to a clown, then a crying woman, and sometimes even a demon. To cope with the confusing and terrifying shifts, Dante concluded it was just easier to see his brother as a circle. In the depths of his troubled sleep, Dante heard his brother's voice calling his name, a faint echo he weakly tried to answer. Suddenly, Dante's eyes shot open, wrenching him from the grip of the nightmare. He found himself on the hard ground, the dream's lingering horror clinging to him. A voice cut through his daze as Lychee called out to him, but Dante remained utterly confused. His vision cleared to reveal Lychee and Rambutan. Lychee asked if he was finally awake, and Dante murmured their names, slowly piecing together his surroundings. Taking in the sight of the tent around him, Dante wondered aloud if the entire horrifying ordeal had been nothing more than a bad dream, a question that Lychee didn't seem to understand. Lychee began to explain that she and Rambutan had brought him here, following a map that led to Drillhead's hidden sanctuary. She clarified that they had found him passed out in the sewers, pulling him from the filth and darkness. Dante was moved, asking if they had really come all this way just to rescue him. Lychee affirmed it was only natural, reminding him of their pact to escape the prison together. Her unwavering loyalty left Dante momentarily speechless. A wave of guilt washed over him. He apologized for delaying them and insisted they leave immediately. Lychee, however, told him to stop, explaining that they had already traveled a great distance and that Rambutan also needed his rest, leaving Dante puzzled. Sensing his confusion, Lychee simply told him to look outside. Lychee proudly revealed that they were right in front of the prison's outer wall. She explained that they had managed to find a blind spot, an area completely free of guard towers. Gathered around the warmth of a small fire, they shared a rare, tense moment of respite. Lychee sought confirmation, asking if Drillhead was truly gone. Dante assured her that he was certain of the man's death. He recounted the utter chaos he had witnessed, a madness that had consumed everyone. The sheer insanity of it all left him questioning what was truly happening within the prison walls. Rambutan's voice cut through the air, low and grim. He called the phenomenon falling, explaining it was death from a fog overdose. Then, he delivered a chilling confession: he had also consumed far too much of the substance. Dante was stunned by the admission. As he questioned Rambutan, Lychee quickly interjected, insisting that he was merely joking. Lychee elaborated on what they had said before, explaining that the more of the glowing blue fog a person consumes, the more they increase their potential. She cautioned, however, that this potential has a limit, and that limit is different for every single person. If someone pushes past their own personal limit, they will simply explode, and all the fog they had consumed will burst out from them. Rambutan added that people never know where their limit is. He pointed out that even Dante, who is good at certain things, doesn't know his own line, and explained that this is how the fog scatters. He continued, saying everyone just waits for someone else to fall. Dante absorbed this, realizing there were only two outcomes in this grim system: ascension or falling. He quietly reflected on the dark metaphor, understanding that falling simply meant death. Dante then wondered what ascension could possibly be, questioning if it meant surpassing one's limit, though he realized that couldn't be the case. Rambutan explained that a double talent might emerge: someone who has already reached their maximum potential, but then gains an entirely new talent. He described how everyone would then follow and worship that individual, who would become the supreme leader. However, Rambutan admitted that ascension is incredibly rare, and that most everyone simply falls. Dante was incredulous, asking if people were truly willing to risk their lives for a second talent. Rambutan simply replied that it was like a legend. He spoke of their belief that one day, a person with an infinite number of talents will appear, someone who can surpass the laws of this world and free them all. Rambutan concluded that this person would become their god, the one they call the Supreme Leader. Dante could only stand in awe at the revelation. As this conversation unfolded, 182 was in another place, preparing for what was to come. 11T2 closed his eyes, extending his senses beyond his immediate surroundings. First, he focused on the faint sound of birds flapping their wings high in the sky. Then he expanded his range, tuning into the chaotic symphony of the prison, the clash of prisoners fighting, someone urinating against a wall, the skittering of a cockroach, and the hollow sound of a hungry stomach. Finally, cutting through the noise, he detected the subtle sound he was searching for, the distinct movement of a pair of eyeglasses. The sound belonged to Dante Kang, who was putting his glasses on. With that one sound, 82 pinpointed Dante's exact location. Perched on a high vantage point, 82 looked down and spotted his target, thinking to himself that he had finally found him. Meanwhile, inside Drillhead's hideout, a very different scene was unfolding. A team of masked men moved about the area with grim purpose. They were carefully gathering the glowing blue lumps of fog that were scattered across the ground. Clad in hazardous material suits and masks, the crew swarmed the place, collecting every last piece of the illicit substance. Watching from the sidelines was a strange figure wearing a paper bag over their head, who noted that the glowing fog was absolutely everywhere. The paper-bagged observer mused darkly that it was the same every day, with someone new always falling victim to the substance. Their eyes fell on one particularly focused worker gathering the fog, and they wondered with contempt if he was just another pathetic soul trying to use it to ascend. Just then, a red-headed man in a suit approached, grabbing the observer's attention by calling them a tourist. The suited man tells the tourist to ignore the trash on the ground, instead offering a plastic bag filled with the glowing blue contraband known as fog. Taking the bag, the paper bag wearer inspects the contents and comments on its excellent quality before asking if their target has been found yet. They clarify if the person in question is the one called One Arm, musing aloud that perhaps he's already been located. The red-headed man's patience seems to wear thin, as he questions how this is all they have to show for their efforts after a whole year has passed. The paper bag wearer replies honestly that they feel the job is unprofitable, especially since the order comes directly from Fogland's operations bureau. Cutting them off, the suited man dismisses their complaints as nonsense. Undeterred, the informant points out that prices have risen significantly this year. Getting to the point, they ask if they can be paid more for their services. The suited man makes a counteroffer, stating that if they can successfully deliver the target to him, he'll give them as much as they want, a sinister grin spreading across his face as he makes the promise. The next morning, the three of them stood in grim silence before a towering, blood-stained wall. Dante tilted his head back, his gaze traveling up the immense height of the structure. He wondered about the nature of the stains, unsettled by the fact that he hadn't heard anything at all during the night. For some reason he couldn't explain, a deep sense of nervousness began to creep over him. Pushing the feeling aside, Dante asked if there was any way he could help, to which Rambutan simply replied that there was. Rambutan handed Dante a bag, instructing him to hold it. Dante hesitantly agreed as Rambutan mentioned there was something else he needed. His tone turned serious as he stressed that this next part was very important. Rambutan then asked an odd question whether Dante was a religious man. Taken aback, Dante explained that while his family was Catholic, he wasn't. Ignoring his answer, Rambutan pushed further, asking if Dante could recite a prayer. Dante was completely baffled by the request, stating plainly that he didn't even believe in a god. Lychee quickly interjected, insisting that belief didn't matter. She explained that in such a desperate situation, everyone prays for a chance to escape, for their captors to let them go. She pressed him again, asking if he could do it. Dante reluctantly admitted that the only prayer he knew was the Our Father. Rambutan declared that would be excellent, reaching his hand out and telling Dante to come closer. With a grim determination, Rambutan announced it was time for them to get out of there. He then began to charge power into his leg, flexing it with incredible force. Dante and Lychee clung tightly to Rambutan as Lychee urgently yelled for Dante to start praying. Shocked but seeing no other choice, Dante began to stammer out the words, starting with, "Our Father, hallowed be your name." As Dante continued the prayer, saying, "Your kingdom come," Rambutan began a countdown, his voice low and focused as he uttered the word 1. As Rambutan's countdown reached, the final count of 3 echoed in the tense air. With his eyes closed, Dante focused solely on his prayer, completely unaware of the violence about to erupt. At the apex of his jump, Rambutan's attack was brutally cut short. A powerful fist descended from above, intercepting him in midair and smashing directly into his face with devastating force. The unforeseen attacker was 8T2, who had grounded Rambutan before he could strike. Sprawled on the ground amidst the chaos, Dante could only manage a choked, pained gasp. the air knocked from his lungs by the sudden impact. Seeing Rambutan injured and gasping, Likey cried out his name in alarm, anxiously asking if he was all right. Rambutan, however, could only respond with guttural sounds of pain. In a state of daze, Rambutan bizarrely asked Likey if she had slept well. Frustrated and scared, Lychee urged him to get a hold of himself, while a stunned Dante looked on in disbelief. Shaking off the initial shock, Dante slowly lifted his head, his gaze fixed on the figure standing over them, the source of this sudden and violent interruption. A wave of stunned recognition hit Dante as he realized their assailant was none other than 82, a person he never expected to see here. Stammering in disbelief, Dante questioned how 182 could possibly have ended up in this nightmarish place. 182's voice was cold as he accused Dante of lying to him. A furious grunt, 182 charged, chasing after Dante, who could only cry out in terror, demanding to know why this was happening. Just as the enraged 182 closed in, Rambutan materialized in a blur of speed. Momentarily taken aback, 182 quickly reoriented himself. Using his superhuman speed, Rambutan desperately tried to create distance, carrying both a bewildered Dante and a terrified Lychee. As they fled, Likey frantically questioned the reason for the attack, urging Rambutan to retaliate and leap over the wall to escape. But Rambutan hesitated, a sudden realization causing him to pause. Their hope of escape dwindled as 82 shockingly matched Rambutan's pace. But Dante screamed back, begging Rambutan not to slow down. Rambutan could only wonder in disbelief how their attacker was so fast. Rambutan silently questioned if 82 possessed some hidden talent for running. From behind, 82's voice echoed again, this time addressing Dante as his teacher and pleading for him to stop. The plea quickly hardened into a threat as 182 warned he would break Dante's leg. In a sudden, brutal move, 182 closed the remaining distance and expertly swept Rambutan's legs out from under him, sending the entire group crashing down. Their desperate flight ended in a painful heap. Dante lay sprawled on the ground, groaning from the impact, completely at the mercy of their pursuer. Shaken and disoriented, Dante slowly managed to lift his head from the grimy floor. He looked up into the face of 182, who now stood directly over him. Overcome with panic, Dante immediately begged him to calm down and wait, asking what lie he could have possibly told, reminding him that he had shared instructions on how to grow sweet potatoes. 182's voice was devoid of emotion as he stated that he had followed the instructions precisely, providing both water and sunlight, yet the plant had failed to grow. Dante was stunned into silence, completely baffled by the sheer absurdity of the accusation. A wave of disbelief washed over Dante as he glanced at his watch. He looked back at 182, pointing out the ridiculous fact that it had only been one day. But 182, his patience wearing thin, dismissed the question, stating that he was wasting his time and turning to leave. Grabbing his head in frustration, Dante insisted that undeterred 82 wasn't wasting his time. He cursed himself under his breath, realizing he was the one who needed to explain the situation properly. He explained that everything needs time to grow, a fact that should be obvious. Dante stressed that it would take at least 4 weeks to even know if the plant would survive, let alone thrive. 82 simply replied that he understood. When 182 asked where he was going, Dante stated that he was leaving. After all, with the explanation given, he assumed he wasn't needed anymore. 82 paused for a moment, silently contemplating Dante's words and his intention to leave. His gaze then shifted to the worried faces of Rambutan and Likey, and he asked Dante if they were the reason he was so eager to depart. Dante was taken aback by the question, stammering in confusion as he warned 182 not to even think about touching them. He insisted that he had fulfilled his part of their deal by telling 182 everything he needed to know, and he pleaded to just be allowed to go. 182's response was chilling and direct. He simply asked Dante if he wanted to die. Dante was completely bewildered by the sudden threat. 82 then reminded him of his earlier declaration that he had a strong desire to live. Pointing towards Rambutan and Likey, 82 coldly questioned if Dante was now so ready to throw his life away for their sake. The accusation was too much for Rambutan, who exploded with anger and screamed at 82 to shut his mouth. A sudden chilling change came over Rambutan's expression, making Dante feel deeply uneasy. Rambutan declared their conversation finished and told 182 to stop bothering them. He then turned his attention to Dante, ominously urging him to come over to their side, away from 182. Dante's sense of unease intensified, and he questioned what Rambutan was even talking about. Rambutan dismissed 82's words as the nonsense of someone whose brain was melting, insisting to Dante that they were out of time. Lychee, sensing the escalating danger, urgently told Rambutan to forget talking and to just grab them so they could all run. Without another word, Rambutan forcefully grabbed a startled Dante, who tried to tell him to wait. As Dante struggled in confusion, Rambutan desperately urged him to pray faster, questioning if he had given up on his desire to escape. The pointed question left Dante momentarily stunned. Dante stammered that he still wanted to leave, but his voice was filled with a deep, unspoken hesitation. Ignoring Dante's uncertainty, Rambutan launched himself into a powerful leap, carrying both Dante and Lychee with him. They soared high above the massive wall, but as they hung suspended in the air, a terrible feeling began to creep into Dante's heart. Recalling how they protected him without expecting anything in return, he remembered Rambutan telling him to step back, insisting that the teacher would be coming with them. He also recalled the moment Drill had attacked, and Rambutan coldly asked if he should just kill him. The memory of Rambutan's unprovoked hostility toward 182 surfaced, yet despite their violent tendencies, Dante admitted to himself that he truly liked them. He had believed they had all decided to leave together, convinced that the siblings genuinely cared about him. As he was lost in these contemplations mid-air, Rambutan's hand suddenly clamped down on his shoulder. In that instant, a chilling realization began to dawn on Dante. Rambutan shifted his leg between them, getting Dante's attention with a quiet call of his name. Then, with a murmured apology, Rambutan shoved Dante with all his might, sending him plummeting through the open air. Dante was sent hurtling downwards, betrayed and helpless. As he fell, he watched Rambutan and Lychee leap away into the distance, leaving him behind. His mind screamed in disbelief at their sudden betrayal. As he plunged into the abyss, a chilling memory surfaced. Rambutan's voice, instructing him to hold on to a specific bag. The horrifying truth crashed down on him. The bag wasn't for supplies, it was filled with the glowing blue fog, the very thing the monster craved. He had been set up as bait. Meanwhile, in a different section of the prison, a group of inmates was performing their daily, meticulous task of tracking the monster's position. They noted its movement for the day, 30 centimeters. A murmur of surprise went through the group as they confirmed the 30-centimeter shift, a significant change in its usual pattern. But their observation was cut short as the creature abruptly vanished from their view. The prisoners grimly concluded that someone else was making a run for it. Another desperate escape attempt was in progress. The monster had instantly teleported, materializing directly in Dante's path. As he fell, its enormous mouth opened wide beneath him, a cavernous maw ready to devour him and the fog he carried.
Before the chaos, Rambutan and Lychee were deep in planning, their minds focused on a single goal. Lychee carefully marked a map, her attention unwavering as she warned Rambutan not to interfere. Standing before the monstrous guardian of the prison, Lychee cautioned Rambutan about the danger it posed. Rambutan observed the creature, identifying it as a gargoyle, a formidable obstacle in their path. Rambutan questioned if it was just a statue, but Lychee warned that it would move if anyone crossed its wall. Rambutan, skeptical, kicked the gargoyle to test its nature, only to be scolded by Lychee for his recklessness. He remained unconvinced that this creature could truly stop them from escaping. Lychee explained that the gargoyle was a creature tied to the fog, possibly a device created by the government to prevent the fog from leaking. She continued, describing how the fog affected everything, from the air they breathed to their very bodies. With a serious look, Lychee revealed that those in charge didn't want the fog to disappear, so they kept blocking it. Rambutan wondered if the gargoyle could think, and Lychee confirmed his suspicion. Lychee explained that the gargoyle could sense the fog and know who was thinking of escaping. As long as the gargoyle was there, Lychee believed they would never be able to leave the place. Lychee tearfully expressed that the more they desired freedom, the more they dreamed of the outside world and sunlight, the more despair grew inside them. Rambutan held her hand, assuring her that it wouldn't be like that, and there must be a way out for them. They looked at each other with love, and Rambutan reminded her of his promise to get her out of that place. Rambutan asked her to trust him, his voice filled with determination. He declared that if it was for her, he could do anything. Back to the present, they were escaping, and Rambutan was more determined than ever. Rambutan turned to see Dante falling, the gargoyle's huge mouth ready to consume him midair. The gargoyle swallowed Dante whole, its massive form looming over the scene. A prisoner exclaimed that he had got Dante, the gargoyle's prey now captured. Rambutan was delighted and happy as his plan had worked. The fog in his bag and those prayers had deceived the gargoyle, making it believe that Dante was the one who had escaped with the fog. With Lychee on his back, Rambutan saw this as the moment they had been waiting for. They jumped over the prison wall, landing outside. They landed successfully outside the prison, feeling the freedom they had longed for. The sunlit desert greeted them, a stark contrast to the darkness of the prison. Rambutan felt the warmth of the sunlight on his skin. Rambutan's eyes widened with happiness as he realized they had made it. They were finally free. Rambutan turned to Lychee, calling out to her, ready to share their newfound freedom. But his joy turned to horror as he saw Lychee's lifeless body, her head torn off, leaving only her remains. Confusion and anxiety overwhelmed Rambutan as he carried Lychee's bloody, headless body on his back. Rambutan looked up, his mind racing with disbelief and sorrow. The gargoyle appeared before them, its presence menacing and terrifying. The gargoyle was chewing the back of the fog in its mouth, a grotesque sight that filled Rambutan with rage. Rambutan, bloodied and angry, watched as the monster crushed its teeth, blood splattering everywhere. Consumed by fury, Rambutan called out Lychee's name and jumped at the gargoyle, ready to crush the monster. With a powerful leap, Rambutan raised his leg, aiming to strike the gargoyle with all his might. In his mind, there was only one thought: to avenge Lychee and destroy the creature that had taken her from him. The monster retaliated, gathering energy in its mouth, preparing for a counterattack. Before Rambutan's kick could connect, the gargoyle emitted a burning energy, forcing him back. The monster climbed up the wall of the prison, seeking higher ground. As the gargoyle returned to the prison, a prisoner watched it intently, his thoughts drifting to Dante as he muttered about the impossibility of escaping this place. The prisoner, 182, sighed heavily, his frustration growing. He fixed his gaze on the gargoyle, determination burning in his eyes. In an instant, 182 ran along the wall with swift speed, closing in on the gargoyle. As he reached the top, 182 positioned himself above the gargoyle. 182 launched a fierce attack, striking the gargoyle's teeth with his bare hands. He smashed the teeth, cracking them under the force of his blows. The gargoyle began to charge its energy, preparing to emit a powerful attack. The gargoyle emitted a powerful attack from its mouth, aiming to strike 182. 182 swiftly dodged the attack by leaning back, making the attack miss him. He muttered about how annoying the gargoyle was, his frustration clear. 182 continued to smash the gargoyle's teeth, urging them to break already. Finally, 182 smashed open the monster's teeth, leaving it vulnerable. 182 peered inside the monster's mouth, curious about what he might find within. There, curled up in fear, was Dante, his body trembling as he tried to make himself as small as possible. Tears streamed down Dante's face as he huddled inside the monster's mouth, terrified for his life. He could barely muster the strength to call out to 182. Dante begged for help, admitting he was wrong and pleading for mercy. 182 reached his hand inside the monster's mouth, determined to save Dante from his perilous situation. With a firm grip, 182 yanked Dante out from the monster's mouth, freeing him from his terrifying confinement. They landed on the ground with a thud, Dante groaning in pain from the impact. Dante clung to 182, still shaken from his ordeal. He confessed that he thought he was going to die and questioned why 182 was acting so terrifying. Dante wondered aloud why he had to go through such an ordeal, and 182 responded sternly, telling him to open his eyes. Dante looked confused, unsure of what 182 meant by his cryptic words. The monster suddenly appeared in front of them, causing Dante to cling to 182 in fear. 182 instructed Dante to say that he won't go anywhere anymore. Dante was shocked to see the monster again and pleaded with 182 to get him out of there. 182 stamped on Dante, forcing him down and telling him to repeat the words if he still wanted to live. 182 reminded Dante that he had told him many times there was no way out of there and that he wasn't lying. Dante was surprised, but quickly realized the urgency of the situation. 182 urged him to hurry and say what he told him if he still wanted to live. Dante finally relented, agreeing to do as 182 instructed. In front of the gargoyle, Dante bowed down and declared that he won't leave again. 182 watched Dante intently, waiting to see what would happen next. The monster glared at Dante, its eyes filled with a mix of anger and something else Dante couldn't quite understand. Dante was shaking, his body racked with fear and uncertainty as he faced the monster once again. Just as Dante stood there, trembling, the monster that had haunted him vanished into thin air, leaving him in stunned silence. Dante could hardly believe it. The creature was gone, as if it had never been there at all. His mind raced with questions, wondering if what he had seen was even real or just a figment of his imagination. A figure known as 182 walked away, leaving Dante to his thoughts. Dante's mind shifted to Rambutan and Lychee, the couple he had been with. Had they managed to escape the same fate as him? 182's voice cut through the air, cold and final. They were gone, he said, leaving Dante in shock. Dante could only manage a single word, his voice barely a whisper as he tried to process what he was hearing. 182 continued, his voice carrying a weight of certainty. What Dante had seen was no illusion, and anyone who tried to escape this land would meet the same fate. No matter how strong they were, no one could defeat the Hollow One. 182's words hung in the air, a grim reminder of the power that ruled this land. Meanwhile, in another part of this land, a different scene unfolded. A person with a paper bag over their head stood before one of the soldiers, known as the Bone Eater. The name alone sent a chill down the spine, and the paper bag person couldn't help but comment on how terrifying it was. The paper bag person couldn't help but ask if the Bone Eater truly lived up to his name, or if it was just a cool name to scare people. The Bone Eater's response was simple. If the paper bag person wanted to know, they would just have to try it. The Bone Eater's tongue extended toward the paper bag person, who recoiled in disgust, shouting for him to put it away. The Bone Eater commented on how soft the paper bag person felt, and how he could tell just by touching them with his tongue. He even went as far as to say that the paper bag person looked tasty, which was met with another shout to shut up. The Bone Eater, seemingly unfazed by the outburst, asked the paper bag person what business they had coming there, calling them a brave kid. The paper bag person showed a photo, explaining that they wanted help finding someone, a man in the picture. The paper bag person began describing the man they sought, prisoner number 182, standing 182 centimeters tall, with 2 moles on the right side of his face and missing his right arm. Bone Eater, intrigued, picked up the photo with his thumb, examining it closely. As he studied the picture, a thought crossed his mind. The man in the photo looked delicious, and Bone Eater wondered if he could eat him. The paper bag person, sensing Bone Eater's interest, asked what else they could do to convince him, reminding Bone Eater that he knew him really well. Bone Eater, curious, asked who the paper bag person really was. The paper bag person revealed that they were the same as Bone Eater, leaving the prisoners confused. Bone Eater looked at the paper bag person and complimented their talking skills, admitting he had never met anyone like them. The paper bag person responded that it wasn't strange, since Bone Eater was just a village kid from around there. The paper bag person continued, explaining that living in a region where only the strong survive, they were a senior of District A. As the paper bag person shared their past, a new presence Lumeth gargoyle reappeared before the 2 prisoners, sending shockwaves through the cell block. The prisoners recoiled in fear, one pointing desperately as they questioned whether this time, the winged golem would spare no one. Their attention fixed on the creature's Mowat's teeth were shattered, a detail that only deepened their confusion. Whispers spread like wildfire. How could the winged golem be injured? What force could have caused such damage? Then a voice cut through the tension. Baba Yaga, the ominous figure from the prisoner's past, had returned. His laughter echoed through the chamber, a sound unheard for 5 long years, while the prisoners exchanged uneasy glances. They noted the change in Himhai's voice, his presence, even the way he carried himself. Everything screamed of something long dormant, now awakened. Baba Yaga's gaze locked onto the chain binding him, a crack forming along its surface, a sign of something far greater unfolding. The prisoners scrambled, their voices overlapping in Paniktha's was the prophecy they'd feared, and every second counted. Baba Yaga's words hung in the air like an omened bird had taken flight, and that day would be remembered. His form shifted, revealing a monstrous truth. Baba Yaga was more than just a man, and his return heralded something ancient and terrible. Meanwhile, Dante and 182 grappled with their own horror. Another hollow, one larger and more terrifying than before, had appeared. 182 confirmed their worst fierce-thighs creature hunted those who tried to escape Fogland, and death was inevitable. Dante refused to believe it. Lychee and Rambutan had never mentioned such a thing, and the weight of deception pressed down on him. The truth was too much. If the outside world knew nothing of this, then escaping Fogland wasn't just difficult, it was impossible. 182 cut through Dante's denial with cold certainty. Escape meant death, and the proof stood before them. Dante's face twisted in horror as 182 delivered the grim truth. There was no way out. Silence followed, heavy with the weight of the revelation. Denial surged through Dante as he whispered to himself, insisting it was all a lie, an impossibility. His mind raced, but the truth refused to be ignored. Anger and despair overwhelmed him, tears streaming down his face as he raged against the reality he couldn't escape. 182's patience wore thin, and with a cold glare, he silenced Dante's outburst with a single, forceful strike. Time passed, the weight of the moment lingering in the air between them. Eventually, the two sat down, the tension between them easing slightly, though the unspoken questions remained. Dante's mind raced as he tried to make sense of it. All was this some kind of prison security system? A machine designed to trap them with hallucinations. Whatever it was, it had to be powerful enough to hold the abnormal inmates here. The pieces were starting to come together. The memory of Rambutan and Leitchi abandoning him flashed through his mind, deepening his despair. He had been nothing but bait. Frustration boiled within him had been so close to escape, only to be thwarted at the last moment. He reflected on the couple standing at the threshold between life and death, realizing there was no time to worry about strangers. From the beginning, everything had gone wrong. A wave of sadness washed over Dante as the weight of his failures settled in. Tears fell as he admitted his obsession with escape had clouded his judgment, leaving him blind to the truth. But one question lingered: had this man saved him? What was he hiding? This time it wasn't about sweet potatoes or clothes, or even knowing fog. There was something deeper at play. He remembered 182's insistence that he eat, a small act of kindness in the midst of chaos. Dante studied 182, wondering if this man was truly just a good person, despite everything. Even after the cruel things Dante had said, 182 had shown him kindness. And despite Dante's cold treatment, 182 had never wavered. Then Dante noticed it: 182's injured hand, hidden from view but impossible to ignore. Curiosity and concern filled Dante's voice as he asked about the injury, but 182 only hid it faster, leaving the question unanswered. 182 insisted he was fine, but Dante couldn't help but notice how strange the injury looked. Dante's confusion grew as he examined the swelling, which seemed even larger than before. 182 repeated his claim of being fine, but Dante insisted on taking him to the hospital. 182 admitted it was just a fracture, though Dante remained skeptical. Dante pressed further, questioning how such severe swelling could be normal and whether it hurt. 182 simply replied that it didn't. Dante couldn't believe that the injury didn't hurt at all. Noticing 182's shaking and sweating, Dante realized he was enduring the pain. After treating and bandaging the injury, Dante told him that was enough for now. Dante then urged 182 to take off his jumpsuit, warning that moving would only make it worse. 182 reluctantly complied, but insisted he needed to eat. Dante countered that even without the jumpsuit, eating would be impossible. Frustrated, Dante emphasized the severity of the injury, warning that without treatment, his arm would be useless forever. Dante questioned whether he could survive with just his legs, leaving 182 silent. Dante admitted they were both weak, realizing that even a minor encounter could be deadly. He warned that if they ran into a thug outside, they wouldn't stand a chance. 182 finally agreed to go to the hospital. Dante was surprised and asked where the hospital was. 182 confirmed there was a hospital, but Dante questioned whether it was a real doctor or just a prison butcher. 182 wasn't sure if the doctor was real, leaving Dante skeptical. 182 recalled fighting a doctor before, somewhere in Zone O. Dante realized the place was much bigger than it looked and remembered seeing a map. Dante thought about the map, realizing something important. He then turned, as if to act on his realization. He turned his attention to the bag in his hands, a sudden realization dawning on him. With hasty curiosity, he peered inside, wondering if his suspicion could be true. His eyes widened in disbelief at what lay before him. Inside, the map Leitchi had drawn was visible through a light fog, and his excitement grew uncontrollably. Dante raised the map high above his head, his voice filled with triumph, while 182 casually pointed out the fog still lingering in the bag. He carefully laid the large map on the ground, reflecting on his mother's words about fate and purpose, though he had never been one to believe in divine intervention. As he began to read the map, he muttered about resilience and the meaning behind failure, his mind already piecing together the next steps. His focus sharpened on the symbols Leitchi had drawn, analyzing their possible meanings. The map was marked with numerous locations, each one a potential clue to unraveling the mystery before him. Then his eyes landed on the medical center, and he felt a surge of determination, sensing that this discovery was only the beginning of something greater. As he continued to examine the map, 182 casually consumed the remnants of fog from the bag, while Dante's mind raced with the possibilities of the information laid out before him. The more he studied the map, the more the structure of the place began to make sense, though its layout struck him as oddly familiar, like a pizza divided into 4 distinct zones. He pondered if there was a central headquarters controlling everything, a thought that gnawed at him as he traced the map's details. Then he noticed something peculiar. The map was torn right at the center, as if deliberately obscured. A sudden realization struck him, and his expression shifted to one of intense focus. The map at that point was folded, hiding something crucial from view. He lifted the map, his fingers brushing against the folded section, curiosity and anticipation building within him. With a swift motion, he unfolded the hidden part of the map, eager to uncover its secrets. There, revealed in the center, was the FOG headquarters, the command center of this entire operation. His breath caught as he realized this was the heart of Fogland, the key to everything. Dante's face lit up with realization as he spotted the general headquarters in the distance, the key to unraveling everything. Turning to his companion, Dante called out with urgency, revealing his plan to head straight for the center of it all. But then his gaze fell upon 182, lost in the grip of the drug fog, and shock rippled through him. The scene shifted abruptly, pulling the focus away from Dante's discovery. Meanwhile, at the information broker's den, Kasim was enjoying his spoils, the fog swirling around him. With a satisfied smirk, Kasim mused about his recent fortune, already planning his next move. He couldn't believe his luck, sensing an opportunity to find the one-armed man quickly, though the noisy atmosphere grated on his nerves. A subordinate burst in, announcing customers, but hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Before the subordinate could finish, the door swung open, and Bone Eater strode in, commanding the room with his presence. Kasim's surprise was evident as the notorious figure stood before him. Kasim recognized him instantly, real deal, the one they called Bone Eater. His mind raced as he took in the scythe lock controlling Bone Eater's insatiable hunger, the monstrous body, the most dangerous man among Zone O's thugs. Bone Eater was a rare sight, and Kasim couldn't help but wonder what had brought him here now. Without a word, Bone Eater showed Kasim a picture, leaving the broker utterly confused. Kasim studied the image carefully, recognition dawning as he realized who it was. This was the man the Bloodhound had been searching for all this time. Bone Eater's voice was menacing as he asked if Kasim had seen the man before. Kasim, ever the opportunist, saw a chance to strike a deal, asking if Bone Eater was looking for someone, relishing the unexpected fortune of a double request. Kasim, the information broker, confidently revealed that he had already looked into the person Bone Eater was seeking, but warned that the information came with competition, demanding to know the price Bone Eater was willing to pay. Bone Eater's response was chilling. The price would be Kasim's life. The information broker was taken aback, confusion spreading across his face as he realized the gravity of the situation. Kasim stumbled back in disbelief, questioning what was happening. He tried to reason with Bone Eater, reminding him that attacking an informant was against the rules of the underworld, but Bone Eater only had one thing on his mind: Kasim's ear. With a sinister smile, Bone Eater placed his hand on Kasim's shoulder, musing about taking a little taste, his curiosity piqued by the size of Kasim's ear. Kasim's terror grew as Bone Eater pondered the texture of his ear, the broker's fear escalating with every passing moment. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the information broker's building, sending a wave of dread through the air. Blood began to flow onto the ground as Bone Eater savored the moment, his appetite growing with each drop. Kasim's ear was brutally torn off, blood gushing out as he writhed in agony. Bone Eater relished the taste, comparing it to the warmth of the sea. Kasim lay on the ground in sheer agony, his pain echoing through the room. The prisoners nearby could only watch in horror as Bone Eater issued a chilling command to find someone immediately. Bone Eater, with a menacing grin, chewed on Kasim's flesh, warning that if his demand wasn't met, he would crave their flavor next. Back with Dante and the prisoner, the area around the central headquarters lay eerily empty, so much so that even Litchi couldn't have made it this far. Dante's gaze fixed on a circled section of the map, the women's wing, realizing it was likely the starting point of whatever dark plan was unfolding. A thought struck Dante, something he couldn't quite place yet, but it lingered at the edge of his mind. As he pondered, a flicker of realization began to take shape. He recalled the other teacher who had come with him, the one who had waved goodbye with a cheerful farewell. Lara, that was her name. She was a science teacher too, but was she also a victim of this nightmare, or had she escaped that fate? Dante shook his head, dismissing the thought. Probably not. Nothing bad must have happened to her. But the scene shifted abruptly, revealing a harrowing sight. Someone was being tormented, their dignity stripped away as cruel hands toyed with them. Lara, stripped down and humiliated, endured the jeers of the prisoners, their laughter echoing like a nightmare. In pain, she remembered her assignment to the women's wing, the last place she had seen Dante. She had been separated from the other teachers from the very beginning, her path diverging with a chilling farewell. A tall guard had guided her, his presence looming as she marveled at the fog in the desert, unaware of the horror ahead. A cold command to get in echoed around her, the guard's voice leaving no room for resistance. Then a vehicle came into view, its purpose unknown but its presence undeniable. Lara's voice trembled as she asked if the classroom was far away, her fear mounting with each passing moment. The guard's response was curt, his command to get in leaving no doubt about her fate. As Lara buckled her seatbelt, a sinking realization washed over her. The guard's words echoed in her mind, but something felt off. Had she misheard? The unease in her gut told her this wasn't right. The guard confirmed her identity as the science teacher, and Lara's nervous affirmation only made the tension thicker. A quiet murmur escaped the guard as they removed their mask, leaving Lara bewildered by what she saw. Tears streamed down Lara's face as the guard's mocking tone cut through her. The words "little baby bird" stung like a cruel joke. The guard's smile turned menacing as they declared they'd be going together, the threat hanging heavy in the air. With a dramatic flourish, the guard tossed their helmet aside, revealing the shocking truth: they were a prisoner in disguise. Lara's mind reeled at the revelation. Lara found herself in Queenstown, the reality of her kidnapping sinking in. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a nightmare. The other prisoners taunted her, their words cutting deep. Lara's thoughts wandered to her teachers, realizing her desperate attempt to leave an impression might have been her only lifeline. Tears welled up as she admitted the danger of this place, but the harsh truth was that not even her teachers could save her now. Lara broke down, shaking as she faced the terrifying reality: no one, not even her family or the authorities, could find her here. The prisoners jeered at her helplessness, their mockery echoing through the room. One prisoner approached, leaning in with a sneer, asking if she was crying again. Lara's trembling denial only made her seem weaker. With a shove, the prisoner knocked Lara to the ground, snarling that she was ruining everything. The prisoner's frustration boiled over as they accused Lara of wasting time, crying instead of researching the fog. The ultimatum was clear: admit she couldn't escape or face the consequences. The prisoner's tone left no room for hope. Lara's tears fell freely as the prisoner demanded results she couldn't provide, the weight of her helplessness crushing her. With a dismissive scoff, the prisoner yanked Lara up, her grip tight with menace. A knife glinted in the prisoner's hand as she sneered, admitting she'd never trusted Lara from the start. The prisoner's final warning was chilling: Lara would pay the price for her failure. Lara stood frozen in terror, the reality of her situation more horrific than ever. With the knife pressing against her face, Lara felt her fear reach its peak. The voice of her captor echoed in her mind, declaring there was no hope left for her. She could only think about the consequences of deceiving the boss, and in that moment, she realized the only thing she could believe in was herself. Suddenly, Kali appeared behind the prisoner who had been threatening Lara, her presence alone commanding attention as she ordered the prisoner to stop. The other prisoners watched in stunned silence, their fear palpable as the tension in the room escalated. Lara, too, was stunned, her mind racing to make sense of the sudden turn of events. Kali grabbed the prisoner by the head, her grip firm and unyielding as she asserted her authority. The prisoner, revealed to be Nox, was terrified and sweating as Kali confronted her, declaring that the joke had gone too far. Nox remained silent, her fear evident in her expression. Kali then turned to Lara with a terrifying expression, questioning what was going on and referring to Lara as her little baby bird. Nox, desperate, tried to intervene, pleading with Kali to listen to her. She insisted that she could not make the fog, and that Lara could make it instead. Kali hesitated, confused, but Lara, seizing the moment, declared with determination that she could make it, that she could really make it. Nox, still terrified, insisted that she was not falling for it anymore, accusing Lara of deceiving them. Kali, however, was intrigued by Lara's claim and questioned Nox further. Kali turned to Nox with a fiery gaze, addressing Lara as her baby bird once more, her tone filled with concern and possessiveness. Nox turned away, her voice filled with resentment, as she warned Kali that she would regret this. Kali, seemingly unfazed, asked Lara if they should leave, her tone gentle yet firm. She repeated her question, addressing Lara as her baby bird, her voice filled with concern. Kali continued, expressing her frustration that even when she left Lara alone for just a bit, Lara got bullied. Her tone was a mix of concern and possessiveness. Later, Kali and Lara were alone in another room, with Kali holding Lara tightly. Kali expressed her regret for not holding Lara like this the whole time and asked if there was anything Lara needed help with, promising to assist if Lara just said the word. Lara explained that Kali was one of the leaders of the women's wing, known as the Tendon Sorcerer, a person who could apply strength to any part of her body she wanted. She continued, explaining that Kali normally kept her neck tense in case of sudden attacks, a habit that reflected her constant vigilance and readiness for danger. Lara, the kidnapped teacher, revealed that Kali was the one responsible for her abduction. Kali, the boss of Queen's Town, paused before asking about the progress of the fog research. Lara hesitantly responded about the fog, and Kali reminded her of the previous gift, asking what else she needed now. Kali continued, expressing frustration that Lara couldn't make it, as Nox had said. Lara admitted that her research was almost done, but she had no time, as Nox wouldn't leave her alone. She continued, saying there was no way she could make it, and that she was just dragging things out with excuses. Suddenly, Kali got up, exclaiming that all Lara needed was time, and that she should have said so from the start. Kali quickly rushed out, shouting that she would make Lara and Nox make up. Kali called out for Nox, leaving Lara to wonder what would happen next. Lara panicked, realizing she shouldn't have said anything and that Kali might think she had tattled on her. After a little time passed, the atmosphere remained tense. Kali reappeared, and Lara nervously asked if she had told Nox. Kali confirmed that she had, and that she wouldn't take Lara's time again. Lara began to protest, but Kali interrupted, asking Nox if it was true. Lara was left in confusion as Kali waited for Nox's response. Then Nox appeared from the corner. Lara stammered, trying to explain herself to Nox. Kali revealed that she had killed Nox and showed Lara the severed head. Lara was stunned and frozen in fear as Kali asked if she had enough time now. Kali continued, asking if Lara needed anything else. Kali couldn't contain her excitement, laughing as she thought about the incredible news that the Fog 16 was finally going to be made. Lara stood frozen, her face pale with terror as the weight of the situation crashed down around her. Meanwhile, Dante and prisoner 182 wandered through the area, with Dante moving as if in a daze. 182 demanded to know what Dante was doing, but Dante responded with a cryptic phrase about hiding in plain sight. Dante clarified that he was simply acting like a prisoner. 182 growled in irritation, telling Dante not to breathe so loudly and complaining about his slow pace. When Dante insisted they keep moving, 182 stubbornly refused, declaring he was too hungry to go on. Dante argued they had already passed 2 cafeterias, but the prisoner only repeated his demand to eat. Frustrated, Dante muttered about the absurdity of a grown man making such a fuss over food, warning that the cafeteria was too dangerous, with too many watching eyes. Dante continued, philosophizing that if you're hungry, you eat; if you're sleepy, you sleep; and if someone picks a fight, you fight. The time for living however you please was over. Dante pointed out that ever since 182's arm had been wrecked, he couldn't fight anymore. And without the ability to fight, there was no way to stop what was coming. Dante declared that now there was a cliff at their backs, and any further retreat would only lead to death. With that, they began to move forward, stepping ahead with resolve. At the information broker's place, Kasim and others pored over documents. Kasim announced it was a masterpiece created through the cooperation of all information brokers, the prisoner registry. He explained that in line with the Fogland system of reissuing dead prisoners' numbers to new ones, it had been constantly updated to that day. But Kasim continued, the last record of number 180Z was death, and for a full 2Z years after that, the number had never been reissued. Kasim trailed off, wondering just who the hell this prisoner was. Other prisoners suggested maybe he had just picked up a dead guy's number tag, as there were plenty who stole rare tags. Kasim, the information broker, firmly rejected the idea that the prisoner's number tag was stolen, explaining that the man in question had been in the same class as hounds and had been issued brand new clothes, which typically meant something far more significant. Kasim continued, emphasizing that the prisoner number was real, leaving the others in shock as they began to process the implications of this revelation. The prisoners pointed at a picture, their voices trembling as they suggested the man might still be alive, noting his unusually youthful appearance despite his white hair. Kasim struggled to accept the possibility, but the prisoners speculated that the man might have gained the talent of youth, making his survival seem more plausible. The prisoners pondered whether the registry simply hadn't been updated yet, but Kasim dismissed the idea, pointing out that enough time had passed for such information to spread among brokers. Kasim realized the information had been hidden deliberately, a revelation that shocked the prisoners, leaving them in disbelief. Kasim concluded that only the Administration Bureau could have orchestrated such a cover-up, leaving everyone to grapple with the weight of this revelation. Meanwhile, Dante and 182 returned to their journey, their minds still racing with the implications of what they had just learned. They arrived at the Dumpling Village, a place that held significance for Dante, who couldn't hide his excitement at the sight of it. Standing at the entrance, Dante exclaimed that this was the village with the hospital they had been searching for, his voice filled with hope and determination. Dante turned to 182, asking if he remembered the Dumpling Village, but the prisoner simply replied that he did not. 182 added that the village was not Tofu Village, a detail that seemed to catch Dante off guard. Dante was surprised by this information, his expression shifting as he processed this new piece of the puzzle. Looking at the map, Dante realized 182 was right. The village was no longer Tofu Village, and he couldn't contain his excitement, though 182 cautioned him not to get too carried away. 182 warned Dante that the deeper they went into the village, the stronger the people they would encounter, a reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. They entered the Dumpling Village, their senses immediately overwhelmed by the vibrant atmosphere that greeted them. The village was alive with color and energy, a stark contrast to the grim reality they had left behind. A bustling marketplace stretched before them, the sights and sounds pulling them further into the heart of the village. As night fell, the village was illuminated by glowing lights, casting a warm and inviting glow over everything, leaving Dante in awe of the beauty before him. Dante Kang gazed at the village before him, utterly transformed from what he remembered, his mind racing with disbelief at the sight. Shops lined the streets, bustling with activity, and the hum of electricity filled the air, a stark contrast to the past that left him in awe. An economic system thrived here, a sign of organization and prosperity that surprised him further. People filled the streets, their presence adding to the overwhelming sense of change that surrounded him. Analyzing the map, Dante realized that all these villages were once under the control of the Shoulders, but this place was different. He examined the map more carefully, searching for answers to the mystery before him. The shoulder controlling this village wasn't listed, a fact that made him wary, urging caution in this unfamiliar territory. Dante called for 182, deciding to step into an alley first to avoid drawing attention. 182 stood at a shop stall, his attention drawn to something specific. Dante was startled as 182 suddenly called out to him, his voice filled with urgency. The shopkeeper listed the price for a single dumpling, a small amount that seemed to carry great weight in this place. 182 admitted he had no money, his words hanging in the air as the tension began to build. A loud noise suddenly erupted, drawing everyone's attention and disrupting the moment. The shopkeeper's tone turned accusatory, labeling 182 a thief, while the prisoners around them began to murmur in agreement. The prisoners stood stunned, their shock turning to outrage as they realized the audacity of the attempt to rob the famous shop. Dante's mind raced with confusion and worry as the accusations flew, his thoughts tangled in the chaos of the moment. 182 demanded the dumplings, his voice firm despite the growing tension around them. Dante watched with concern, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The shopkeeper's voice rose in disbelief, questioning whether they truly expected the dumplings, symbolizing the soul and history of the village, for free. The shopkeeper's anger flared as he challenged them, his words sharp with the weight of tradition and pride. As 182 began to speak, Dante quickly covered his mouth, silencing him before the situation could escalate further. Dante apologized profusely, his mind racing for a way to diffuse the tension, but the shopkeeper's suspicion only deepened. The shopkeeper demanded to know who they were, his voice laced with accusation, as the crowd's gaze turned to them with growing hostility. Dante Kang stumbled over his words, desperately trying to explain that they weren't thieves, but that his younger brother was very sick and mentally unwell. The shopkeeper, however, wasn't convinced and accused them of being robbers, especially suspicious of the mask Dante was wearing. Dante's nerves got the better of him as he fumbled with his mask, sweating in fear. The shopkeeper, now enraged, raised his knife and declared that evil ones were not allowed in their village, ordering their execution. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, a mysterious short figure appeared and stopped the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper paused, taken aback by the sudden intervention. All eyes turned to the new figure, who had suddenly become the center of attention. The shopkeeper recognized the figure as Elder Mongol Dumpling, a respected figure in the village. Elder Mongol approached Dante and asked about his brother's sickness. The shopkeeper quickly interjected, accusing Dante of trying to steal Mongol dumplings, but Elder Mongol pointed out that Dante didn't even have a hand to steal with. Dante was confused and silent as Elder Mongol told them to follow him. Elder Mongol led them away, questioning why they were wearing such vicious-looking masks. As Dante ate a dumpling, Elder Mongol apologized for the village's rudeness and explained that they were trying to keep the village as wholesome as possible. He continued to serve dumplings, but one of the group, 182, complained about not getting any. Elder Mongol asked Dante how the dumpling tasted, and Dante praised the incredible savory flavor, wondering how they got ingredients in such a place. Dante then spat out what he was eating, realizing it was made from cafeteria slop leftovers. Dante fed 182 a dumpling, who was initially hesitant, but then expressed his surprise at the taste. Elder Mongol explained that Mongol dumplings were the village's pride, and people came from all over to taste them. He added that some also came for other reasons, hinting at something more. Dante focused his attention on Elder Mongol as he mentioned the hospital. Elder Mongol asked if they had come looking for the hospital, and Dante hesitated before responding. Dante Kang abruptly halted their steps, his gaze fixed with sudden intensity as he processed Elder Mongol's words. Elder Mongol rolled up his sleeve, revealing a faded scar on his hand, as he declared that the place they sought was no longer a hospital. The elder's voice turned grim as he revealed its new purpose, the Demon King's castle. With a sigh, Elder Mongol confirmed that this was the name everyone now used for the once sacred place. Dante Kang's confusion deepened as he processed the words. The Demon King's castle, what kind of place was that? Before he could gather his thoughts, Elder Mongol's voice cut through, heavy with warning. Inside that castle lived an entity of unimaginable danger, one that had claimed countless lives without a single survivor to tell the tale. Elder Mongol continued, his tone grim as he recounted the story of Urk and the Wall, another tragedy tied to the same dreadful force. The message was clear: no one who dared approach the Demon King's castle ever returned. The very air around it seemed to swallow the brave whole, leaving no trace behind. Dante's mind raced. If the castle was as treacherous as Elder Mongol claimed, then what about the gang leaders rumored to lurk nearby? But before he could voice his thoughts, the elder's warning grew even more dire. Even approaching the castle was impossible, Elder Mongol insisted. The danger wasn't just within its walls, it was the very act of drawing near that sealed one's fate. Dante's confusion only grew, his expression a mix of doubt and unease. The weight of the elder's words pressed down on him, but his mind was already elsewhere, grappling with a more immediate concern. Wait, if the castle was so perilous, then what about the doctor? The thought struck Dante with urgency. They needed medical help, no matter the cost. But Elder Mongol's response was swift and unyielding. There was no doctor, Elder Mongol admitted. As far as he knew, that was all there was to it. The realization hit Dante like a cold wind, but the elder wasn't finished. With a sigh, Elder Mongol offered what little comfort he could. He would arrange for them to stay the night, but come morning, they had to leave immediately. This place was no longer a hospital, it was a relic of a darker time. Later that night, the weight of the day's revelations settled over the room. Dante sat in silence, his mind churning with unanswered questions. What had Elder Mongol meant by that? The question gnawed at him, but the night offered no answers, only the oppressive stillness of the room. The next day, Dante's frustration boiled over. What the hell had happened here? Had the Demon King slaughtered every doctor in sight? The thought was unbearable, but he needed answers. He turned to 182, the prisoner who had been silent until now. When was the last time he had seen a doctor? The question hung in the air, charged with desperation. A long time ago, 182 admitted. But Dante pressed further, needing details, needing to understand what had happened to this place. What was the hospital like back then? Dante urged. What was the situation when you were last here? The prisoner's memory seemed to flicker, as if recalling something long buried. I was missing an arm, 182 began, his voice distant. The revelation sent a jolt through Dante, but the prisoner wasn't finished. He had been hungry, dizzy, desperate for help. The memory of that day came flooding back how he had stumbled into the hospital, hoping for treatment. And there was a doctor there, 182 recalled. The man had seemed like a beacon of hope in a world that had already taken so much. Doctor, he had begged, heal my arm. The plea had been simple, born of sheer necessity. But Dante couldn't let the story continue without interruption. Did you really say that? He asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. 182 confirmed it, and Dante pressed further. What did the doctor say? The arm, 182 began, his voice trailing off as the memory resurfaced. The doctor's response had been cold, dismissive. Do you want me to attach it right away, idiot? The words echoed in 182's mind, still sharp with the sting of humiliation. That's what he said, 182 admitted. It had been too much, too cruel, too callous. The anger had flared within him, uncontrollable. So I hit him, 182 confessed, the weight of the memory heavy in his voice. 182's voice trembled as he recounted the brutal exchange, how the doctor had struck him first, and how he had hit back, only for the doctor to retaliate again. Dante listened intently, his concern growing as he asked whether the doctor had been killed. 182 firmly denied it, insisting he had only taught the doctor a lesson. Dante pressed further, questioning if the lesson had been moderate. 182's response was vague, hinting that the doctor was still around, though his tone suggested otherwise. 182's mind flashed back to the moment of his defeat, the doctor's final strike sending him to the ground. The memory was fresh, the lesson still stinging. 182 declared his intention to hit the doctor back, but Dante was taken aback, demanding to know what he meant. The prisoner repeated himself, his resolve clear. Dante's confusion turned to disbelief as he questioned whether 182 truly thought he could do it. Dante argued that they didn't even know if the doctor was alive or dead, reminding 182 that the village chief had already stated the hospital no longer had a doctor. 182 looked at Dante, his expression unreadable, before uttering a single word that left Dante puzzled. Dante's confusion deepened as he asked what 182 meant. The prisoner responded cryptically, claiming he had heard the doctor's voice. The scene shifted to an unknown figure spinning a pair of scissors, the air thick with tension. The figure remained hidden, their presence lingering ominously. Through a window, the figure watched, their gaze fixed on the scene below. Dante and 182 stood before the hospital, now barricaded by danger wires and surrounded by lifeless bodies. The sight was grim, the atmosphere heavy with dread. Everything around them was stained with blood, a stark reminder of the violence that had taken place. Dante's voice was barely above a whisper as he took in the horror around them, corpses everywhere, some old, some fresh. From skeletal remains to recently fallen bodies, the scene was a nightmare, the bread seller's words now undeniably true. This place was no longer a hospital, Dante realized, his voice tinged with disbelief and horror. Dante turned to 182, questioning whether there truly was a doctor there. The prisoner reiterated that he had heard the doctor's voice, his conviction unwavering. The conversation lingered in the air, Dante's gaze fixed on 182 as the weight of the prisoner's words settled between them. Suddenly, realization dawned on Dante. 182 possessed an extraordinary ability. His hearing was unnaturally sharp, capable of perceiving sounds with incredible clarity. The scene shifted back to the previous night. Dante had heard something of faint sound. His curiosity piqued. He wondered if it was the doctor's voice. 182, however, seemed dazed, lost in thought as the memory resurfaced. Dante pressed further, questioning if that was truly the doctor's voice. 182, though uncertain, couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Dante's mind raced. Perhaps 182 had a special talent, something like abnormally sensitive hearing. 182 denied it, insisting he had no such ability. But Dante, desperate for answers, refused to accept that. He demanded to know if 182 could hear sounds others couldn't. Frustration crept into Dante's voice as he questioned why 182 always heard noises no one else did. If such an ability existed, it could be their key to survival. Yet 182 maintained his denial. Dante, lost in thought, covered his mouth with his hand, pondering the possibilities. A murmur escaped his lips, barely audible. 182 turned, his gaze locking onto Dante with sudden intensity. Dante's eyes widened in shock, caught off guard by the prisoner's reaction. Before he could react, 182 lashed out, kicking Dante in frustration. Back in the present, Dante recalled the incident. He had barely moved his lips, yet 182 had heard him. It was clear now the prisoner's hearing was indeed extraordinarily sharp. With this revelation, Dante's mind raced. If 182's hearing was that acute, then perhaps the place they were headed, the Demon King's castle, or the hospital held answers. Standing at the entrance of the hospital, Dante knew there was no choice but to investigate further. Dante quickly pulled 182 behind a wall, hiding from view as he whispered instructions. Peering cautiously, Dante scanned the area, his voice low as he asked if 182 could see anything. Dante identified the main entrance of the hospital, his focus sharp. He questioned if 182 could hear anyone talking inside. Turning to 182, Dante reminded him of the plan, urging him to recall the steps they had discussed. 182 recounted the plan: knock on the door and hide as fast as possible. If the one who came out wasn't the doctor, find a weapon and run away. Dante nodded in approval. With the plan fresh in their minds, they prepared to move forward. Dante laid out the plan: ring the bell and run. But there was a catch, prisoner. 182 had razor-sharp hearing and speed that rivaled Rambutan's. The odds were stacked, but the plan had to work. Dante's heart pounded as he reasoned that if 182 could reach the hospital entrance, they could safely scout the situation inside. The tension was palpable. 182 moved swiftly to the entrance and delivered a powerful kick to the door, testing the waters. He quickly turned and sprinted back, his speed leaving no doubt about his capabilities. In an instant, he was back at Dante's side, the two of them waiting to see if their plan had worked. Both stopped and observed the entrance, but there was no sign of movement. Dante muttered in confusion, "Oh, one was coming out." He questioned whether there was any sound inside, any sign of life. 182 hummed thoughtfully before suggesting another attempt, this time with a harder knock. 182 kicked the door again, this time with even more force. He turned and sprinted back once more, his speed unmatched. He returned to Dante's side, but again there was only silence. The eerie lack of response left Dante even more puzzled. Dante questioned the silence once more, and 182 confirmed there was still no sound from inside. Dante's frustration grew. What was going on? If the place was empty, then what about the doctor's voice they had heard earlier? 182 offered to try again, promising an even harder knock. Dante barely had time to react before he was off. This time, the kick was even more powerful. The door splintered instantly, and 182 charged inside without hesitation. Dante was stunned by the sheer force of the attack. The door was completely destroyed, leaving Dante in disbelief. What kind of strength was this? Dante called out to 182, but there was no response. Panic set in. He needed to get out of there quickly. Suddenly, 182 was violently thrown out of the broken door, crashing to the ground. Dante's shock deepened. What was happening inside? Then a chilling thought crossed Dante's mind: the Demon King. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, stepping into the dim light. The figure's hands moved with eerie precision, spinning a pair of scissors as if ready for a fight. Dante's eyes widened in shock, his breath catching as the truth began to dawn on him. The figure's identity became clear. It was the doctor, his expression twisted in annoyance as he let out a string of curses. Dante's mind raced as he realized the doctor was the one standing before him, the pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. The doctor approached them, his presence adding a new layer of tension to the already charged atmosphere. 182 bluntly stated that the newcomer was a doctor, his tone carrying a mix of urgency and demand. The doctor looked confused, his expression reflecting his bewilderment at the sudden declaration. The doctor questioned if they had come to see him for medical help, to which 182 responded with a firm affirmation. 182 demanded that the doctor fix his arm, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. The doctor, taken aback by the prisoner's bluntness, gave him 3 seconds to leave, his patience clearly wearing thin. Dante Kang intervened, scolding 182 for his lack of manners and reminding him that the more pitiful he looked, the better. The doctor began counting down, his frustration evident. The doctor approached and started removing 182's mask, questioning if he had brought someone named Inohim with him. The doctor paused, his next words hanging in the air with a sense of finality. The doctor questioned whether 182 thought he deserved to be treated like a human, his words dripping with disdain as he referred to him as trash. 182 simply reminded the doctor that he was indeed a doctor, his tone steady and unyielding. The doctor retorted with a dismissive "so," his indifference clear. The doctor questioned what being a doctor had to do with 182's injury, his tone laced with sarcasm. 182 remained silent, his resolve unwavering. Suddenly, 182 launched a kick at the doctor, his frustration boiling over into action. Dante was shocked by the sudden outburst, his eyes widening in surprise. The doctor reacted swiftly, defending against the elbow kick and ordering 182 to get out immediately. The doctor berated them, stating that this was how people like them behaved, his voice filled with contempt. The doctor then kicked, but 182 dodged swiftly, his movements quick and agile. The doctor scoffed, calling them a bunch of ill-mannered idiots. The shock wave from the doctor's kick was so powerful that Dante was blown back, the force of it catching him off guard. At the last moment, the doctor stopped his leg, just before making contact with 182's face, his control precise and deliberate. The doctor expressed surprise at 182's ability to dodge his attack, acknowledging his skill despite having only one arm. 182 swiftly moved his arm in a spinning motion, preparing for his next move. With precision, 182 landed a kick directly on the doctor's stomach, showing his agility and strength. The doctor quickly grabbed 182's leg, halting his momentum and preparing for a counterattack. The doctor remarked on 182's tough act, acknowledging his resilience and fighting spirit. Using 182's leg, the doctor swung and threw him to the ground with such force that it broke apart the ground beneath them. From the sidelines, Dante remained knocked out, unable to intervene in the intense battle. The doctor pondered his next move, considering the best course of action to take against his resilient opponent. The doctor lifted 182's leg, declaring that his legs were now useless as well. The doctor taunted 182, questioning what he could do now in his one-legged state. In a swift and unexpected move, 182 locked the doctor in place with his other leg, demonstrating his adaptability and skill. 182 performed a leg lock, catching the doctor off guard and leaving him momentarily confused. 182 then started biting the doctor's arm that was holding his leg, causing the doctor to react with surprise and pain. The doctor was taken aback and surprised by 182's unexpected and aggressive tactic. As he looked down, the doctor saw 182 biting his arm, targeting a specific muscle with precision. The doctor realized that 182 was targeting his flexor muscle, a strategic move that intrigued him. The doctor smirked, his eyes glowing with interest, as he found 182's tactic fascinating. In an instant, something pierced 182, causing him to spit blood and react with surprise. 182 was caught off guard, spitting blood as he tried to comprehend what had just happened. The doctor began piercing 182, his attack precise and relentless. The piercing continued, the doctor's attack unyielding and calculated. The doctor's assault persisted, his focus unwavering as he maintained his advantage. Finally, the doctor threw 182 down, ending the intense exchange with a decisive move. 182 quickly recovered, landing gracefully and creating distance between himself and the doctor. The doctor began listing the areas he had targeted during his attack, starting with the masseter muscle. He continued, mentioning the internal oblique and lumbar muscle, detailing his precise strikes. The doctor further elaborated on his technique, focusing on the peroneus longus. 182 collapsed, and the doctor explained how tendons had to be cut in a specific manner to achieve such a result. The doctor smirked, clearly pleased with his demonstration of skill and precision. He drew attention to his handiwork, asking if the significance of his actions was understood. The doctor approached 182, who was still on the ground, unable to move. The doctor pointed his scissors at 182, reminding him that he had given him 3 seconds to leave, implying that his current predicament was a result of his own hesitation. Suddenly, Dante rushed in, intervening just in time to prevent further harm. The doctor watched annoyingly as Dante stepped in, telling him to stop. Dante urged everyone to calm down, explaining that they hadn't come there to start a fight but to see the doctor. The doctor questioned who they were, hinting that they had been hiding and sneaking around like bugs. Dante explained that he wasn't sure if it was a hospital, which prompted the doctor to ask why they were looking for one and to just live their trash lives and drop dead. The doctor added that either way, they were going to die naturally, to which Dante commented that the doctor seriously hated prisoners. Dante questioned what if he wasn't a prisoner, which made the doctor start talking to him. Dante insisted that the doctor look at him and listen, stating that he had never even lost a fight before. He declared that he was a normal person, 100%, which left the doctor looking confused. The doctor repeated Dante's claim, questioning what a normal person was doing there. Dante explained that there was a prisoner education program and that he was a teacher participating in that program. He mentioned that the riot had gotten violent and he had gotten stuck there. Dante pleaded with the doctor, asking if he really was a doctor and that they needed help. The doctor laughed, questioning if there really was a private prisoner education program. The doctor found the situation interesting, leaving Dante confused by his reaction. Dante started explaining, mentioning that he was wearing Stefano Rixai, a top custom brand from Italy, and that his pants were also of high quality, questioning how a prisoner could have such items. The doctor, curious about the situation, asked what assistance was needed. The doctor urgently requested to call the management office and asked for prisoner 182 to be treated well. 182 groaned in pain behind them, drawing attention to his suffering. The doctor inquired if the person in question was a teacher. 182 lifted his mask, causing a commotion. Dante grew worried as the situation unfolded. Dante confirmed that the person was indeed a teacher, specifically a physical education teacher. The scene shifted to the location of the information broker. Inside a room, Bone Eater announced that the day they had promised had finally come. Bone Eater commented on Kasim having a beach-like scent. Kasim responded that he didn't think they had ever set a specific date. Bone Eater reminded Kasim that he had said he missed the taste of him. Kasim began to sweat, showing signs of nervousness. Kasim revealed that the location was Tofu Village and that there was a witness there. Bone Eater's eyes glowed, signaling something significant was about to happen. In an instant, Bone Eater started running towards Tofu Village. The prisoners questioned Kasim about the wisdom of giving high-level intel to Bone Eater. Kasim responded that sometimes calculations were necessary and sometimes they were not. The prisoners further questioned if the other big shots would stay quiet, especially since Kasim was the only fog distributor in Zone 0. Kasim pointed out the sound from Bone Eater's stomach, indicating his hunger. Kasim admitted that they didn't know what kind of person Bone Eater was. Kasim explained that Bone Eater didn't care about the unwritten rules among the big shots or the boundary with the management. As Bone Eater and his followers raced toward Tooth Village, Kasim emphasized that Bone Eater was driven solely by hunger, indifferent to any rules or boundaries. Inside the hospital, the air felt heavy with neglect, the walls bearing the weight of time and decay. Dante's gaze swept across the room, taking in the eerie stillness that seemed to cling to every surface. The place was shabby, with every corner whispering tales of abandonment and disrepair. Cracked walls and spider webs stretched across the room, making Dante ponder how truly old this place looked. It felt like an abandoned house, slowly rotting away, forgotten by time and the world outside. In such a decayed place, Dante questioned if it was really a hospital, wondering what monstrous things might have been built there. A doctor's voice cut through the silence, assuring that the wound wasn't serious and could be treated to recover as before. Dante reached his hand out, introducing himself as Kang Dante, but the doctor cautioned him not to touch, warning of infection. The doctor introduced himself as Ha Yi Relin, insisting there was no need for formality. Dante acknowledged the doctor, but Ha Yi Relin quickly asked about the other person's name. Before the doctor could finish, Dante interrupted, blurting out a name on the spot. Dante claimed the other person's name was David, a quick fabrication to fill the silence. The doctor, Ha Yi Relin, questioned if Dante was a physical education teacher, noting his aggressive tone and mentioning strange rumors about the place. Dante hinted at rumors of a demon king hidden there, and questioned what incident had caused the hospital to look so run down. With a sigh, Ha Yi-Relin admitted that something had happened there, forcing him to reject the request to contact the administrative office. He confessed that his situation was no different from theirs, revealing that even he was being held in that place. The doctor's words hung in the air, a stark admission of their shared predicament in that forsaken hospital. Dante struggled to comprehend the doctor's words, his confusion growing as he questioned how someone from the administrative office could be trapped in this forsaken place. The doctor acknowledged his affiliation with the administrative office, but clarified that Dante was misunderstanding the situation. He revealed that he had been assigned to the hospital on a mission about 4 years ago to practice his surgical skills. At that time, many people had come to the hospital, including interns like him and doctors transferred from other departments. However, not long after their arrival, all of them died due to a lunatic who suddenly lost control, with the doctor being the sole survivor. Dante asked what happened after that, and whether anyone had tried to rescue the doctor. The doctor responded with a question of his own, implying that if he had been rescued, he wouldn't have been trapped there for 4 years. Dante mentioned hearing that the rescue efforts became difficult due to the thick fog. The doctor questioned if Dante still hadn't realized that the ones who truly belonged to the administrative office were those who kept wearing masks and moving around as if nothing had happened. It wasn't that they couldn't find them, but rather that they had deliberately abandoned them there. Dante sat down with a gloomy expression, realizing the gravity of the situation. From the entrance, the fog was already covering everything thickly, and they had no protective equipment. Everyone who was their back then inhaled that fog, and Dante never saw any old masks. The masks those soldiers used were just simple, ordinary masks, leaving Dante to wonder who they really were and if they were people from the administrative office. Dante recalled the words of Ha Yi-Relin, a doctor who had also been sent there under orders, possibly from the administrative office. Dante was overcome with despair as he realized that everyone had died, leaving him in a state of shock and silence. In his despair, Dante questioned if even those people had been deceived, adding to his confusion and pain. Dante wondered why they had brought him there, mentioning that a teacher was missing and they needed someone truly competent who could adapt and start over in any situation. Dante remembered William Cox's ID card, which identified him as part of the International Penal Agency, Crater Containment Section, and the International Alliance Crater Administrative Office. Dante recalled his meeting with William Cox, the leader of the special team who had come to see him. William Cox apologized for the sudden visit without prior notice, and Dante wondered why someone from the International Alliance would want to see him. William Cox commented that the place seemed simpler than he had imagined, leaving Dante confused and questioning. William Cox asked if Dante was the son of the famous doctors Kang Edward and Kang Selina, mentioning their family's wealth. Dante replied that it wasn't a fortune he created, and that he had been living independently for a long time. Dante asked if William Cox had come because of something related to his parents, but William Cox denied it. William Cox revealed that the target they were after was Dante himself, the one who refused to continue his father's research career and chose the path of being a teacher to educate young children. Dante acknowledged that it was true, and William Cox continued to explain their interest in him. Dante looked at William Cox, who admired his decision to give up opportunities and favorable conditions to follow his own ideal. William Cox praised Dante's exceptional genetic code and his admirable act of choosing his own path. William Cox continued to express his admiration for Dante's choices and abilities. William Cox put a document in front of Dante, stating that he was the ideal model they had been looking for. William Cox asked Dante if he was interested in the job they were about to propose to him. As the document revealed the proposal from the International Law Enforcement Agency for the Crater Detention Office's Prisoners Education Project, Dante Kang couldn't help but wonder what it was all about. William Cox explained that the International Alliance of the Penitentiary System wanted Dante to take charge of a long-term educational project there. Dante questioned if they really meant a jail, to which William Cox confirmed his understanding. William emphasized that a prison was a place where hope and dreams hardly survived, which was why they needed someone as talented and open-minded as Dante. Dante wondered why everyone was praising him so much and mentioned that he didn't think the job was beneath his background. William pointed at Dante and stated that it was exactly that quality which was truly valuable. William continued, saying that it was the style of the Dante he knew, and that he believed Dante was the extraordinary person capable of awakening sparks of hope, whether that place was a paradise or a living hell on earth. Shifting back to the present, Ha Yi Relin addressed David, acknowledging the current state of the hospital and the lack of anesthesia. Ha Yi Relin asked if David would be able to endure the procedure without anesthesia, to which David responded that it was fine. Ha Yi Relin continued, explaining that in exchange, he would treat the injured areas completely in one go. With determination, Ha Yi Relin focused and declared that he would treat the injuries completely in one go. The surgery began with precision and skill as the doctor started the procedure. The doctor continued the surgery with unwavering focus and expertise. The procedure involved careful cutting, slashing, and stitching of flesh, demonstrating the doctor's skill. The doctor meticulously reconnected broken tendons, showcasing his surgical prowess. With swiftness and precision, the doctor completed the surgery, blood splattering as he worked with incredible speed. As the surgery progressed, the wounds began to heal, each injury slowly mending under the doctor's skilled hands. The doctor meticulously stitched up 182 wounds, his hands moving with precision and care. Finally, the doctor finished stitching the last of the wounds, his work nearing completion. The doctor decided to double-check his operations, ensuring everything was perfect, starting with the neck muscles. He moved on to the abdominal muscles, and then the thigh adductor muscles, examining each with a critical eye. The calf muscles were next on his list, each step bringing him closer to the end of the procedure. The doctor finished the surgery, but 182 was on the brink of losing consciousness, his body barely holding on. The doctor noted that everything had already been reconnected, a sense of accomplishment filling the room. He couldn't help but marvel at the patient's resilience, still conscious and not having screamed once. Finally, the doctor turned his attention to the arm, which the patient had mentioned was broken. The arm looked quite swollen, and with the X-ray equipment broken down, the doctor suggested opening it up to check directly. The doctor instructed the patient to open his mouth wide, preparing for the next step. With a deep breath, the patient clenched his teeth as the doctor began slicing open his arm. The pain was excruciating, but the patient endured, his hands opening wide in agony. The doctor examined the arm and found that the bone was completely shattered, likely from a strong impact after the initial injury. The doctor couldn't help but wonder what had happened to cause such severe damage. First, he needed to check the condition of the soft tissues, starting by pulling the bone fragments outward. As he worked, the doctor noticed something unusual, something that didn't quite make sense. He paused, trying to understand what was happening. It seemed like something was sticking to the bone fragments. The doctor realized that something was not right, his curiosity piqued by the strange occurrence. He knew he had to figure out what was going on, his mind racing with possibilities. The doctor observed the fragments, noting with frustration that they seemed to be returning to their original positions. In a fit of anger, the doctor yanked off his mask, his frustration clearly visible. Suddenly, the operating room door opened, revealing an unexpected interruption. Dante Kang stood there, surprised to see the doctor, wondering if the surgery was already finished. Dante was utterly confused by the scene unfolding before him, unable to comprehend what was happening. The doctor, still furious, carried an entity on his shoulders and angrily questioned if Dante was tired of living already. The doctor's anger grew as he accused Dante of tricking him into treating one of those prisoners. Dante's confusion turned to worry as he realized the gravity of the situation.